If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial pound law, that is pound 529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. A warm and friendly hello. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by Matt Josephs. You know him a little bit better as Mid-Major Matt. We're going to be joined by him talking about what we've been seeing over the last few weeks in college basketball, how he's gauging conference play, some of the things that he looks at in conference play as well. We'll break down a few games for tonight, take a look at the hierarchy of the Atlantic 10, the ACC as well. So a nice wide-ranging chat with Matt in segment number 2. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Jaden_D1. Keep in mind, letters ZM, naming does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a heck of a day of college basketball on Monday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Yay, verily, your worst cover team in all of college basketball got their second cover of the year and their first cover since opening night. Minnesota, the state with the smallest drinks in the union, loses to Ohio State 89-88 in double overtime. If you like me, I had the under, very brutal way that this game went to overtime and then double overtime, but Minnesota goes 12 of 29 from 3, and they have nobody but themselves to blame for this loss. They went 12 of 27 at the free throw line as you had Parker Fox throwing their 21 points. You had Dawson Garcia only give the team 5 points, and yet they stayed afloat. So we'll give a little bit of credit where it is due there. But for Ohio State, it was Devin Royal who was able to hit a bucket with about 5 seconds remaining to tie the game up. He had a free throw to try to win it, missed it. They got the rebound, missed that, got another rebound, missed that, and then the game went to double overtime. So fun and frivolous for behavior there, as for Ohio State, they lose the turnover and rebound battles in this game, but won 29 of 33 at the free throw line. Houston just continues to be a bulldozer with regards to their defense. They absolutely take it to TCU, this by a count of 65-46. So TCU on a line of about 18.5. They were able to get the cover here, but TCU quickly becoming one of your better under teams in all of college basketball as well for this TCU team. They have now played 9 unders to just 5 overs thus far this season, as for TCU, 3 of 18 from 3-point range, and in this game, 19 turnovers and 20 made field goals, and Houston went 8 of 19 from 3-point range. Emmanuel Sharp lived up to that name. He gave the team 14 points, so very rock solid out there. Wisconsin has been one of your better over teams in all of college basketball this year, but very underwhelming against Rutgers, but they get the job done at the rack. 75-63 the final, as Rutgers has been one of your more, shall we say, disappointing against the spread teams in all of college basketball this season, as they tried to have Dylan Harper give it a go. He made it 15 minutes. He scored as many points as myself, so that was less than savory. Rutgers now, by the way, 5-9-1 against the spread, and for Wisconsin, it's not like they shot it amazing from 3, 7 of 22, but 31 of 57 from the floor. John Tonje, 15 points, as it was John Blackwell along Stephen Krull that really took hold of this game. They combined for 39 points. Krull is able to throw in there 10 rebounds. Wisconsin is able to win the rebound battle 40-37. They also lost the turnover battle 16-8, as it was a little bit sloppy out there, as Ty Acuff, 17 points for Rutgers in this one. And then South Florida takes it to Wichita State, this by a count of 91-72, and it's been a less than savory year to say the least for South Florida. I mean, both on the court and off the court, you feel for them losing their coach prior to the start of the season. Wichita State, by the way, now 5-7-2 against the spread, so that's been a little bit less than tremendous. In South Florida now 5-9 against the spread, but Wichita State 3 of 20 from 3-point range. South Florida goes a nice flamethrower, 12 of 26 from the outside, as off the bench you were able to get 15 points out of Kobe Knox to really lead the way, and then Jamiel Reynolds down low, 22 points, 10 rebounds, so nice bit of destruction out there. We got ourselves some nice SWAC and MEAC action as well. If you like me at Grambling, a little bit of a tough non-cover there in overtime, as Texas Southern, who has been really bad against the spread this far this season, they are now 3-10 against the spread. They get the win and cover in overtime by kind of 71-66, as Grambling just 5 of 24 from 3-point range in this one. Texas Southern 8 of 24 from 3-point range, and Grambling, they lose the turnover battle 18-14, but they actually bludgeoned down the glass 51-37. They did win that battle. A team that has been quite solid against the spread out there in the SWAC has actually been Florida A&M. They were off on Monday as they are 7-4 against the spread, but you've had a lot of teams that have been bad against the spread in the SWAC, as Alabama A&M, they failed to cover against Mississippi Valley State. Mississippi Valley State now 4-9 against the spread, as this game lands 79-67. Alabama A&M actually got 20 plus points in this one towards back half of the first half, and then Mississippi Valley State had a 25-3 run. Like, I had no idea what sort of universe I had woken up in, but that was strange. But Alabama A&M did win the battle on the glass 49-26 in this one. And for Mississippi Valley State, perhaps they're finding something in Arthur Tate, who was able to supply the team with 17 points and saw a lot of overwhelming results in the SWAC on Monday, as well. As it depended upon your closing number in Grambling versus Texas Southern, but every single game went over if you had a 136.5 or less in regards to that Grambling versus Texas Southern game. As for Arkansas Pine Bluff, 10 overs at 3 unders for them thus far this season. They lose to Alabama State on the road by kind of 93-91. Pine Bluff was up in this game by double figures, by the way, so they relinquished that lead. But Dr. Bradley, 35 points, was one of the top junior college transfers in all of college basketball. He's part of that New Mexico State team that was part of the scandal a few seasons ago. He has now resurfaced with Pine Bluff and gave the team 5 points, 7 boards, 7 assists, and 7 turnovers. So lucky sevens for him, and Alabama State went 12 of 29 from 3-point range. So some very fun and frivolous behavior out there in the SWAC. With regards to MEAC, Morgan State has been a flamethrower to the over thus far this season, 12 overs to 300. So we did have a pair of games that were postponed out there in the MEAC that include the Howard versus Maryland Eastern Shore game. If you bet the NC Central versus Morgan State game, by the way, that is going to be actually played today. But we did see in the South Carolina State versus Coppin State game, Coppin State actually scored some points. They've been a good under team, 6 overs, 9 unders, and a push, but 85-77 South Carolina State, they get the job done. No cover in that one, and South Carolina State has actually been a relatively respectable team against the spread this far this season, so I thought that one was interesting. As Norfolk State, they're now 12-4 against the spread, while South Carolina State is now 11-6 against the spread after that loss. Norfolk State, they win and cover against Delaware State 73-64. Game was played a little bit earlier due to the weather as well. And for Norfolk State, 17 of 23 at the free throw line. Delaware State did go 19 of 21 at the charity stripe, but Norfolk State wins that turnover battle 18-13. So they found a way to get the job done. And then in the Southland, you had some very fun action as well. As McNeese has not necessarily been the most profitable team against the spread for you thus far this season, but they do find a way to be able to get the job done. On Monday, they were able to get a win and they were able to get a cover. 92-69 entered the day 7-6 against the spread for McNeese. 16 of 28 from 3 points. Sincere Parker off the bench goes 6 of 8 from the outside. Every single one of their starters score at least 12 points in this game. Northwestern State, they went 8 of 25 from 3-point range. They gave it a relatively good effort, but lost the turnover battle 13-9. They lose the rebound battle 32-26, and McNeese just could not miss on this night. Your top cover team really in this conference and a top 5 team in the country in terms of making you money. Houston Christian, they get it done once again. Stone cold Stephen F. Austin. They were stone cold with regards to trying to limit this Houston Christian team. 83-73 the final. Stephen F. Austin actually wins the turnover battle by kind of 17-13, but they got just dump trucked on the glass. 41-22. Houston Christian and Julian Mackey go off for 22 points. So how about Houston Christian making you some money? UT Rio Grande Valley has also been very profitable. They're now 8-3 against the spread. Southeast Louisiana took them down by kind of 79-75, and for Southeast Louisiana, they're now 8-4-1 against the spread. So these two teams have been very good there. For Grand Valley, they go 14 of 43 from 3-point range, while Southeast Louisiana 25 of 30 at the free throw line. They found a way to get there as Shakavion Buckley, he was able to slide the team with 25 points. So nice effort out there. And a team that has always been pretty solid to the over has been New Orleans. And New Orleans, shock, surprise, surprise, they play yet another over on Monday as they get it taken to them by Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi, they get the win. They get the cover by kind of 97-83. As for this New Orleans team, they're now just 8 overs to 7 unders, but if you look at them since they've come onto the betting board, that was prior to the start of the 2018-19 season, they've actually been your best over team in all of college basketball, hitting 63% of their games to the over. And for Corpus Christi, well, things were very overwhelming with them being able to just do a nice job shooting 59% from the floor, and it's actually Corpus Christi who's your top over team right now in the Southland at 8 overs to 4 unders as far this season. Meanwhile, Stephen F. Austin, who I just hit upon, that was just their 3rd over of the season that they played on Monday as well. And then another team of intrigue, Incarnate Word. They have now won 7-4 against the spread. They do not cover against Lamar, though. Lamar gets the job done by kind of 72-58. As for Incarnate Word, a really nice first half, a really, really slow second half. Just 61 points in the second half to deny you an over if you are in on that, as Incarnate Word 5 of 17 from 3-point range. We've also got Northwestern State at 7-4-1 against the spread thus far this season. They took that loss to McNeese, so we shall see on them moving forward. And if you're taking a look at the trends that we're getting in college basketball right now, it's been a little bit of an overwhelming season, but we have been seeing quite a few unders coming through over the last 7 days. Overall for the season, the over rate is at about 50.3%, 1,206 overs, 1,193 unders, while underdogs, they have had themselves a nice season, 12-18, 1,182, and 36 against the spread. But if you look at the last 7 days, quite a few favorites have been coming home. 162, 140, and 6 against the spread for favorites. That's a 53.6% hit rate, while the unders hitting at 51%, 156 unders to 147 overs. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Monday. Now let's take a look at what we're going to be getting for Tuesday in the ACC in the Atlantic 10, and some of the betting trends that our good friend Matt Josephs, aka Mid-Major Matt, is looking at. That's up next right here on Plus Gun Seats with myself, Xavier, and now a part of the CBB Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Cups Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this man as we got Matt Josephs aboard. You know him a little bit better as Mid-Major Matt, as he does a tremendous job over at FTN Network, FTN Bets, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Additionally, he does a great job over there at the ESPN radio affiliate out in Richmond, Virginia, with the show Border to Border as well. Did a great job on the college football front all season long, as well as that hits the Final Four. So he's a man of many talents, does them all so well, and you're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Mid-Major Matt all together. And Matt, great to get you aboard. Thank you.
No problem. Snowing here on the East Coast. Nothing better than having a little college hoops on TV.
Absolutely. As the weather gets colder, the college hoops action, it gets hotter. And just what have you made out of the early portion of conference play thus far? Because I thought that Saturday's action was very intriguing. And additionally, Saturday's action, in terms of the games involving those ranked teams, those power conference teams, it was very striking that the favorites did very well on Saturday.
It's funny because some of the conferences, you can see that the cream has risen to the top and the best teams are the best teams. And then there's other conferences like the A10 and to some extent the ACC that are starting to cannibalize themselves a little bit with the middle of the pack again getting victories over that top. So it's always interesting to see early on in some of these conferences, can the teams that had momentum in the non-conference carry it over, or was it fake? And then it starts to come out what the team they really are when they start playing the teams that know them the best.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that that's going to be very telling. And we are going to be having quite a few of those mid-major conferences going down on Tuesday. You get a nice little bit of a blend because you get like a few Ohio Valley Conference games, you get a few MAC games, but then you get the Big Ten, you get the SEC, what have you. And in terms of the SEC, I think that this conference is going to be so interesting to watch because I think that home court is going to be massive with so many teams that are so talented but are so tightly bunched together, because I do think that Auburn and Tennessee might be a little bit of a cut above, but those two teams that we saw on Saturday in Kentucky and also Florida, I think that they might be a good tier number 2. And then you've got a lot of teams like 5 through 10 where I think that that's just very a matchup by matchup situation with regards to how those teams are going to shake out.
Yeah, I mean, you look at all the numbers of all the ranked teams in this conference, you see the 1, the 2, the 5, the 6, the 8, the 10, and so on and so forth. And then, it's funny because you look at all the teams who won their first conference game, Vanderbilt's up there, and Vanderbilt's 13-1. And, that's Mark Byington just doing a tremendous job at Vanderbilt. I mean, I had a chance to watch him at James Madison, saw what he was able to do. And and him bringing over a Jalen Carey, who was very impressive with the Dukes and JMU. So it's a really deep conference, and it gives a lot of opportunities for some of those teams who aren't ranked to get upsets and to get themselves into the NCAA tournament. I'd be surprised if we don't have 9, 10, potentially 11 teams from the SEC. Now, how many of those teams move on? That'll be a different story, but you may see about 10 or 11 teams from the SEC make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, a game or two below 500 in SEC play, in my opinion, should be more than enough to be able to get you in the NCAA tournament. It's all 16 teams won 10-plus games in the non-conference slate, as Matt Josephs, aka Mid-Major Matt, does an excellent job over at FTN Network and FTN Bets, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Matt, I know that you've talked about this with me quite a bit, always taking a look at Toledo, their team totals, what have you. How are you playing this team this season? And additionally, how are you going to be taking a look at their game for Tuesday, as they're going to be against Eastern Michigan? That total is about 152, with Toledo being a 10.5-point favorite. And I just feel like this isn't quite the same Toledo team that we've seen in past years.
It's always interesting because Kowalczyk is such a good coach. Todd Kowalczyk is such a good coach, and his offensive system seems to work. This is just not as deep of a team as they usually have, because, usually they have their really good starting five, and they've got 2 or 3 guys coming off the bench that they can kind of rely on. But this feels like it's a very top-heavy team. I like their starting five, and I like Lorenzen coming off the bench. And, it seems like at home, which they haven't been for a couple of games, they had a very tough stretch. I mean, playing Houston and Purdue back-to-back around the holidays when you're not getting consistent practice time anyway is certainly an interesting stretch. And then they start conference with the road win at Western Michigan. I mean, look, Eastern Michigan is not very good defensively. I mean, they're 361st in three-point percentage defense. You look at what they've done on the road. They give up 86 at Davidson. You give up 76 at Loyola Chicago. I think it's one of these things where I pretty much always play the Toledo team total over and just kind of adjust the unit size. The games I'm more confident, I'll put more on. And then the ones I'm not as confident, I'll put a little less on. But I think the pace will be there for some points for Toledo. It's just they've got to take advantage of it, and they've got to be able to score some points.
Yep, it certainly is going to be interesting to see what we get out there. And just how do you gauge some of those games where you might have a big giant weakness with a team? Because you just mentioned it with Eastern Michigan. Absolutely brutal at being able to guard the three-point arc, though. I will say this is a better Eastern Michigan team than we've seen in past years. I'll give a little bit of credit where it is due, but I always think that that's interesting, especially when you have like one team that's really good at popping it from three-point range, one team that's really good at defending the three. I always think that those could be some of the most difficult and, in some cases, some of the most fun handicaps to have as well.
We talked about it on our show today in Richmond. William and Mary, almost 52% of their shots are from three-point land, and they're hitting them, and that's why they swept the weekend up in New York when they beat Hofstra and Stony Brook. Well, now they're coming home to play an Elon team. 44% of the shots that opponents take against Elon are three-pointers. They are actually giving up the 6th most percentage of three-point points in the country. So you've got a hot team that shoots a lot of threes against a team that's more than willing defensively to give up those threes. I know that we can't say this in our handicap but tell me how many threes William Mary makes, and I'll tell you if they're going to win this game. So that's one of those matchups where you're kind of taking a look and saying, all right, well, if William Mary's hot, they're going to go over this thing. They're going to win this game rather easily. And if William Mary's cold, well, Elon's probably going to win.
Absolutely. And I always think that that's interesting with regards to teams that don't foul very much versus teams that they try to get a lot of their points from the free throw line as well. Those are some of the more interesting handicaps. And just how do you decipher those sorts of things as well? Because I always think that those are some of the more fun games to be able to take a look at. And those are some of the games where I think that it's twofold. They're easiest to get wrong, but at the same time, they're the easiest to have big edges on. And if you get it right, you're able to find yourself some really good betting opportunities, and you just have a good handle on a team in general.
Well, I always liked, and it hasn't happened this year, and actually probably I don't think it happened last year, but a couple of years ago when Stephen F. Austin and Abilene Christian played each other, those are two teams that were traditionally very good at forcing turnovers, but if you got past their turnovers and got past the press and everything, they were going to foul you and you were going to the free throw line. It's about like 2 years ago when these two played each other, they were higher scoring games. They would always get like those totals in like the mid 140s, the low 140s, and I'd be like, well, if we're getting a lot of fouls and we get the right officiating crew, which it's hard to handicap them as a whole, like you're going to get a lot of free throws, and scoring points when the clock is not going is tremendous for your overs. And I'm looking at it now. 2 years ago it was 75-68, and then they had a 2 overtime game that went 91-87. So yeah, it's always good to kind of look at those teams and how much they foul and how much they rely on getting to the free throw line. Some of the better offenses in the country are the ones that maybe don't necessarily shoot as well, but they get to the free throw line, they crash the boards, and that's how they kind of bridge the gap.
Yep, absolutely. And those are some of the more fascinating teams as well as Stephen F. Austin, a team that has really been playing some interesting basketball. We saw them in action on Monday. We are actually doing this as the game goes along, but how do you take a look at a team like that? Because Stephen F. Austin has been one of the more interesting handicaps of the year for me because they have slowed down significantly from what we've seen in past years. They turned the ball over 20 plus times per contest, and as you alluded to, still a very good team at being able to force turnovers, but it's hard for me to bet on teams that shoot less than 30% from three, shoot less than 60% at the free throw line, and quite frankly, we see Stephen F. Austin is running some of the ugliest offense I've seen in quite some time.
Yeah, for those who are Ken Palm familiar, I mean, the more extreme their color is, the good or bad that is, and there is a lot of extremely blinding red, and you just mentioned it, 57% from the free throw line, 23% from three-point land, and 26% turnover percentage, and we're now at the point where, like, these numbers mean something. This isn't like 3 or 4 games in. This isn't like, oh my God, they played all these really tough teams, and of course, it's not unfortunately like the SWAC teams who go and try and get the paychecks and stuff like that. Stephen F. Austin's played Monmouth, Youngstown State, Louisiana Monroe. They've played some teams that are on their level, and these numbers are still really bad. The fascinating thing is they're getting a lot of offensive rebounds, but it's only because they're missing so much.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that with regards to sample size as well as Matt Josephs, better known as Mid-Major Matt, joining me on Coast to Coast Soups because now I think that we're starting to find our bearings with these teams, but at the same time, there were some teams that maybe played a softer out-of-conference schedule. They got a little bit fortunate outside the conference, like we saw it over the weekend with Oklahoma. They were a big underdog against Alabama despite the fact that they were undefeated. Got just completely lambasted there. I thought that Cincinnati and their non-conference schedule was going to be a little bit of an issue. They lose at home to Arizona. How much do you want to be taking a look at that this time of year? Because I feel like for some teams it has ironed out, but there are still a few outliers out there that I think we can really exploit some value from that either played soft non-conference schedules or perhaps got a little bit lucky in a few results that really warped their win-loss record.
Well, and I think that's the case with when, as you mentioned, I mean, we've got SWAC games, and that's the kind of the toughest part of handicapping those games is because of all the road contests and the few times they play at home, they look good at home. And some of them may not even play their first home game. I mean, Monmouth, who's not in the SWAC, has only played like 1 or 2 all season. So I think that kind of warps some of the numbers too, because as I said, teams play so much better at home than they do on the road. So I kind of enjoy, taking a look at the preseason expectations for the SWAC teams, who they think is going to be pretty good and how much that carries over to the regular season, because you literally have to wipe away the start of the season for conference play when those teams play because of how little you can use those numbers. Of course, they're going to give up a lot of shooting percentage. Of course, they're going to give up a lot of points. Of course, against some teams, pace is not going to be to their liking because, they're playing teams that are so much better than them. So, yeah, you really have to consider sample size and non-conference. It's almost 2 separate seasons. I've talked about this with you in the past. I think Rhode Island's a little bit faulty. I mean, I think Rhode Island was a team that, has that nice win over Providence and it has a nice win in other places. But, I don't think Rhode Island is as good as their record is. So I think we're going to start to see some opportunities to bet against Rhode Island, especially on the road, losing at Duquesne as they did in the A-10. So it's really kind of taking these seasons in thirds almost. You do the non-conference, you do the conference, and then everything gets wiped away once it comes to conference tournament time in March.
I think that that's very well said, as Matt Josephs, better known as Mid-Major Matt. He is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Soups, and I do think that it is going to be interesting to see what we get moving forward from the Atlantic 10, because sometimes you get some really interesting Tuesday games in the Atlantic 10. I do not believe we have any for this Tuesday. We're going to be seeing more next Tuesday, but what have you made out of that conference? Because I've been very impressed by it top to bottom. Obviously, there have been a few outliers like Fordham's not necessarily looking too amazing, and though I do think that there's going to be some regression for Rhode Island, even if they do regress, it's still a whole lot better than what I was expecting from them towards the beginning part of the season. But obviously Dayton, VCU, they have been right there, but there have been a few other teams that have been able to rise up, and even Duquesne, who started off the year really badly, that win over UC Irvine I thought was big for them.
Well, I mean, you look at GW, they lose the game at Richmond. It was a close game. They were up in the second half. They were on their way to a solid victory against the Spiders, and they lose 66-61. And then the next game they come home and they beat Dayton by 20. That's just kind of the thing that this conference does, unfortunately, where they start to have these, potential at-larges maybe. Dayton had a really nice resume coming out of non-conference, and then boom, they lose to GW. VCU starting out 1-1 with 2 of the toughest road trips or tougher road trips in the conference at St. Bonaventure and Loyola Chicago. You actually look at their schedule. VCU starts out with those 2 games. Then they come home and they play Fordham at home. Then they host St. Louis. They're at St. Joe, at Rhode Island, home to St. Bonaventure, and then at St. Louis before their first game against Richmond. I mean, that's a lot of tough tests for a VCU team that I still think is going to be very good, but you've got a lot of interesting tests. I mean, they're going to be done playing St. Bonaventure by January. They're going to be done playing St. Louis by January. They're going to play those two teams within a 2.5-week span, and that's kind of ridiculous and kind of amazing at the same time.
Yep, it certainly is going to be interesting to take a look at what we're going to be getting in terms of that schedule. And to your point, feels like it does happen every single year in the Atlantic 10 where you get some cannibalization, and can't forget about the conference tournament as well, where the one seed just never makes it past like 1 or 2 rounds, where it always feels like they get out so very early as well. As Matt Josephs, better known as Mid-Major Matt, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and we do have ourselves an interesting slate for Tuesday. We already touched upon that Toledo game, but is there anything else that is really catching your attention for Tuesday? Because we've got some mid-major games, we've got some high-major games, we've got a little bit of something for everyone. Anything that's really standing out to you?
This North Carolina team, we're so used to North Carolina having really good forwards and centers, and they still have the really good guards, but they're more of a internal team. You think of the history, Tyler Hansbrough, Armando Bacot, and like those guys. This is kind of a poor forward group for North Carolina, and if you look, SMU is one of the best teams when it comes to offensive rebounds, so I think it'll be interesting to see how SMU does. I mean, obviously, look, they got blasted by Duke. Can they get over that pretty quickly? I mean, I think that's the difference. When you play in the AAC, and let's say you lose to a Memphis, you then have, a nice stretch of UTSA and Tulsa and Charlotte. Charlotte-like teams, and you would be able to get healthy and be able to get back into the swing of things. We can't do that in the ACC. You play Duke, then you're going to play North Carolina, and then there's Virginia, and then there's Miami, and, so on and so forth. So how will SMU bounce back after getting blasted by 27 against a Duke team at home? I think they're going to be able to rebound inside a little bit with North Carolina and take advantage of that poor forward group for North Carolina. I don't think SMU's going to Chapel Hill and winning, but remember, we're also still towards kind of the back end of that vacation time where students may not necessarily be back. That's something you always have to consider because some of these atmospheres are not going to be very good. I have now started a tradition. Instead of watching my alma mater Syracuse play, I put on a Syracuse football tape from this past season so that way I can at least be happy. JMA Wireless Dome's going to be dead, and Georgia Tech's not very good, but Syracuse isn't very good, and Georgia Tech's won 3 straight. Now, granted, all of them were at home, but this is going to be a JMA Wireless Dome that's going to be empty, and it's going to be bad, and Syracuse just doesn't play defense, and their offense isn't very good, and I'm not going to keep going because this is not Syracuse radio or anything like that, but I just think, when I see a Syracuse, a -1 at home against Georgia Tech, who's not very good, that just shows how poor Red Autry's been this year. Pittsburgh and Duke, I mean, by records, 2 of the best teams in the conference. I don't think Pittsburgh's that good, but we'll see. Duke has been beating teams up at home. They've been certainly able to take advantage of it, and those kids I don't think actually go home because I looked at the last home game. They all seem to be there, so it's going to be a good atmosphere there for Duke, but I think it'll be a nice test for Pittsburgh, who I don't think is as good as their record, but maybe they'll hang within the 14 that is the spread on Tuesday night.
Yep, and I think that, for one, I just still can't get over it not being called the Carrier Dome anymore with regards to Syracuse. That's a transition that I don't know if I'll ever be able to make because I'm just so used to that, but to your point as well, the ACC is such an interesting conference where it just feels like it's Duke and everyone else, because you were mentioning SMU. SMU got blown out by Duke, which is completely understandable, but it just feels like that's the most, shall we say, one-team heavy conference out there in all of college basketball right now. Even looking at some of the mid-majors as well, I feel like it's just Duke and everyone else in the ACC, and the ACC, much like you were talking about the Atlantic 10, cannibalizing a lot of their at-large teams. I feel like that's happening with a lot of the bad teams, beating up on more of those like number 3 and number 4 teams in the ACC year in and year out as well.
It's very funny because this is the conversation I had on the air today. Why the ACC's down is because the recent powers are not there right now. Virginia Tech is bad. Virginia is bad. Miami is very bad. Syracuse is bad. Notre Dame is 500. Of course, they don't have Marcus Burton. NC State makes the Final Four run last year. They're 8-6. So the top of the conference is always going to be there. But Virginia was top. Now they're way bottom. Virginia Tech was kind of middle top. They're now bottom. Syracuse was kind of middle in some years. Now they're in the bottom. So it's one of those conferences that always kind of relied on its depth to keep them going. Well, that depth is gone. And by the way, I feel like the only team that can maybe beat Duke in this conference is Clemson. I think Clemson has the guard play. I think that could make things interesting at least. And they certainly have the interior with Shefflin and Locken coming over. So I think Clemson's our best shot. Maybe Duke goes on one of those road games and somebody shoots really well against Duke and they get them. Maybe a Wake Forest, who I know offensively can get hot, although they haven't really done so consistently yet. But it's really Duke and everybody else in the ACC, which is absolutely crazy to think because during our time, it hasn't been this bad.
Yeah, for Clemson, they had the longest time of not being able to knock off Duke along with North Carolina. Now they might be the best hope of being able to knock off those teams. So has been very wild to see, to say the least. But what else is wild is this college basketball season. Matt, you do a great job of covering it all. Let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, I'm Mid-Major Matt on Twitter. That's where I post a lot of my stuff here. And obviously, I like to look at the other markets that are out there, team totals. Certainly, I do a lot of team totals in college football. And I've started to look at some props now because I have a couple of apps that even though you can't bet on props here in the state of Virginia, there are some that offer them. So I'm kind of looking at that sort of thing. As I always like to say, we all have the same goal. We all want to beat the book. So any questions that your followers have that I might be able to answer, I'm certainly here to do so because this is a great sport and there's so many ways to make money. We just have to hone in and find the right ones.
Absolutely. And Matt does a great job of being able to carry that out and so much more every single time he joins me. Lends such great insights. Did so once again today. So big thanks to Matt Joseph for joining me on Coast to Coast Superstar, part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back here, lovely Las Vegas, for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to get Mid-Major Matt aboard. He does such an excellent job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights. Did so once again today. So big thanks to Matt for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @unit_D1. We are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games with 3 digits on the rotation first. So we're pretty much going with everything in time order. And then that NC Central versus Morgan State game that we were supposed to get yesterday, that is the game that is going to be placed at the bottom. For one, it's part of the extra games board, and two, they had to add it because they thought they were going to be playing it yesterday, but due to inclement weather, hopefully those of you guys out there in the northeast part of the country that are dealing with this snow are all safe. That is going to be the game that is going to be at the bottom. So how about if we get things started with 601, 602 on the betting board. St. John's is on the road against Xavier, and the X-Men find themselves as a 1.5 to 2.0 underdog. And tonight's game is 151.5, and right now I'm seeing a 151 out there, and 151 is my buy point on the over. I did set my total at 151.5. You do have a Xavier team that has been pretty efficient with their offense, top 50 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. And for St. John's, even though they're not necessarily shooting at the world's greatest from three-point range, they've been able to find a lot on the inside. They're only about 78th in the country in terms of points scored per possession, but I feel like they're going to be able to find their sea legs just a little bit more moving forward. As for the St. John's unit, it's been RJ Lewis Jr. really headlining the offense with 16.5 points per contest, has shot just 23.5% from three, and the St. John's team as a whole, they're shooting just 31% from the outside. They're outside the top 270 with that regard. Meanwhile, they do go up against the Xavier team that they're going to leave you open from three-point range, as they're allowing opponents to shoot 37.1% from three-point range at home. Zuby Ejiofor should be able to do a nice job down low with about 2 blocks, 8 rebounds per game, but even with Zach Fremantle out of the fold, I do like Xavier in this spot because I do think that Jerome Hunter is going to be able to do a nice job holding his own down low. He's been able to give this team right around about 4 boards, 7 points per game, and now with Fremantle out of the lineup, he's going to be seeing more and more minutes in the post, and we've been seeing that as he's given the team 4+ rebounds so far the last 5 games, and in the last 2 games, it combined 4 blocks and 4 steals as well, so has been making an impact on the defensive side of things. We've got Ryan Conwell shooting 43% from 3, 16.5 points per contest. For a Xavier team that as a whole is a top 25 team in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage at 40%. They're shooting 77.5% at the free throw line. Now for St. John's, they've been able to do a pretty rock solid job with regards to their defense. They're a top 50 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and the St. John's team with regards to their perimeter defense, that's where they really can be hurt. They're allowing opponents to shoot 39.5% from 3 on the interior. They're much stronger with Ejiofor and company, and I do think that with Xavier having so many nice pieces in the backcourt like Conwell, but you've also got Davion McKnight, give you 4.5 assists, shooting 39% from 3, 11.5 points per contest. Miles Foster has been able to shoot 43% from 3. That Xavier finds a way to get the job done, especially with Dante Devontae Maddox starting to give you a little bit more of something as well. It's a Xavier team that, with regards to their defense, they have given up at least 69 points in each of their last 4 games. It's been a little bit up and down with regards to their offense, but do think that both of these teams find their mark from 3-point range. So in on the over at a 151 or less, I do like Xavier outright. On the money line, made them a 1.5 point favorite. 603, 604 on the betting board. It is Kent State, and they hit the road face off against Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois, an underdog of 11.5 points. So this game between 135 to a 136. Set my line at 12.5. I'm going to be willing to lay out with Kent State. For Northern Illinois, you just really have a team that's not doing anything well. They are outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Their offense right now clocking in at 352nd in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. So, I mean, it's just all sorts of rough for them. And then they go up against a Kent State team that is really grinding things down to a crawl. Kent State outside the top 310 in terms of total possessions per game. Kent State has done a really good job with regards to their interior defense, as well as they're allowing opponents from 3-point range to only shoot about 26% from 3 on the road, but they're doing a nice job not allowing teams to get second and third chances, with Silveron Hornbeek doing a nice job, give you about 8 points, 7 boards per contest. It's a Kent State team that they themselves are only shooting about 29% from 3-point range, but they do a nice job keeping things relatively clean with their possessions, only about 10.5 turnovers per game, as you've got Siam Medley, who comes over from St. Louis. He's only giving you 5 points per contest, but 3.5 assists, so less than 1.7 turnovers per game. Von Cameron Davis has been the main headline scorer. He's throwing in there about 15.5 points per contest. I've been liking what I've been seeing out of him, a little bit over a steal per contest as well. And for Kent State, when they were really at full force a few seasons ago and were able to make the NCAA tournament back for the 2023 NCAA tournament, the biggest reason why was their turnovers. They were a top 40 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they might not be quite back to that as of right now, but I mean, still, this has been a team that's done a really nice job of just being able to force that ball pressure out there along the perimeter. More around about 46th in the country in terms of total turnovers per game force. And then this is an Northern Illinois team that has had a tough time being able to hold on to the ball, as you do have a double-figure scorer out there in the backcourt, and James Dent Jr. has given you about 12 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, so good versatility while shooting 37.5% from 3-point range. You've been able to get right around about 16 points per contest out of Quentin Jones as well, but it's a team that as a whole, they shoot about 32% from 3-point range, only about 41.5% from the floor, and they're just not getting a lot from the interior. Ethan Butler is now back in the lineup. That should be able to help them out a little bit, as he's given the team a combined 11 rebounds at 26 points in the 2 games that he's been back out there. But do think that Kent State is really going to be able to do a nice job with regards to their defense. I do think that Northern Illinois just continues to be lackadaisical in terms of that, and I do think that Kent State really going to be able to force that ball pressure. So did set my total 134.5 in on the under, and we'll lay up to 12 with Kent State. 605, 606 on the betting board. Akron is going to be playing us to Central Michigan, and Central Michigan is an underdog of 8 points. Your total on this game is 146.5, and I said Akron is a 5.5 point favorite. So here at the 8, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Central Michigan, a team that is lacking quite a bit more on defense than they did a season ago. Last year, they were a top 150 unit in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, back outside the top 200, but much of this, in my opinion, is due to the schedule that they played. They had to play against Arizona, Mississippi State, Marquette in the non-conference portion of the season. They went on the road against Minnesota. Obviously, that was a little bit of a confidence booster with regards to their defense, but I mean, all in all, it's a Central Michigan team that they either played non-Division I teams or they played really good power conference teams. Not a lot of in between. Anthony Pritchard has done a nice job throwing their 4 assists, 2.5 steals, 12.5 points per contest for a Central Michigan team that they're a little bit better with their offense than they were a season ago. Last year, they were outside the top 300 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. They're still turning the ball over about 14.5 times per contest, but they themselves do a relatively solid job being able to generate some turnovers, with Pritchard being able to give you those 2.5 steals per game. But Jacoby Heady, who comes over from Bethune-Cookman, he was very good at generating turnovers a season ago. Down a little bit this year, but still north of a seal, 13.5 points, 6.5 boards, good versatility at 6'6", so do like to see that. And then on the flip side, for Akron, this team has fallen outside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You do have Nate and Tavari Johnson. Johnson squared combining for 24 points, 7 assists per game, and for Tavari Johnson, he's shooting 36% from 3-point range. It is an Akron team, though, then turn the ball over about 12.5 times per contest, and Akron has really decided that they're just going to gun it with regards to their tempo as well. Typically, Akron, well inside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. They are 24th this season. This has been a total 180 for them. It is an Akron unit that has been okay at being able to generate turnovers, not necessarily amazing with that regard either, as Akron about 72nd in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Central Michigan, they're hovering more around about 210, so we've seen a little bit of a drop off there, and James McConkey should be your best low post presence in this game. He's able to give 8.5 boards, a little bit over a block per contest to this Akron team. But on the flip side, you do have for Central Michigan quite a bit of good versatility as well, as you've got an international man of mystery who's able to give you 12.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, and Ugnias Jarvicius, who's been able to also give you a little bit from the outside, shooting about 30% from three-point range. So I do think that with Central Michigan, the defensive numbers a little bit warped due to the non-conference schedule that they played. I semi-total more around 145.5, so I'm in on the under end. Being able to get 6+, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Central Michigan. 607, 608 on the betting board. Ball State going to be playing against Miami of Ohio, and Miami of Ohio is an underdog of a point total on this game between 145.5 to a 146. Did semi-total 145.5, so at the 146 as my buy point on the under, but I did set Ball State as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 1 to 1.5. I just believe that Ball State is going to be getting more out of Peyton Sparks moving forward. 2 seasons ago, he was giving the team 7+ boards. He was throwing their 14+ points per game. He spent last year over at Indiana, where he was pretty much glued to the bench. Thus far this season, he's given the team about 6 boards, 10 points per contest. He's been relatively solid, but hasn't necessarily been able to reach peak form. But we've been noticing recently that he's been able to have some very nice performances for this team, as in the last 3 games, he's had a combined 49 points. He's went out for a combined 28 rebounds in the last 2 games as well, albeit one of those games was against non-Division I Anderson of Indiana, but I do like what I'm seeing there. And then this is a Ball State team that as well is a relatively solid 3-point shooting team, with having Juan Sebastian Gorecito being able to shoot 46% from 3-point range. He's giving you about 10 points per contest. Jeremiah Hill, he hasn't necessarily been great with his 3-point shooting, but he's splashing in there 16.5 points per contest. And Mikey Pearson, last year shot well north of 35% from 3. That's been down to about 26.5% from the outside this year, but still give you about 10.5 points, 6 boards per contest. Ball State has been able to do a relatively solid job on the glass, and this is a team that they get to the free throw line. In terms of free throws attempted per game, they're a top 15 team in all of college basketball. On the flip side, you do have a Miami of Ohio team that their discipline is just not necessarily the world's greatest. I've never been a fan of Travis Seal, and for Miami of Ohio, they certainly do have guys that can go off and have big games on any given night. Peter Suter had north of half of the team's points when they won against Air Force a few weeks ago. I remember that game, and the team had something like 73 points, and he had north of 38 of them, so he's capable of going off on any given night. Ian Elmore along Cam Kraft have been able to combine for about 20.5 points per contest, with having Kraft shooting 44% from 3, Elmore right around about 41% from 3-point range, and overall it's a Miami of Ohio team that is a top 10 team in the country with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. I do think that you're going to be seeing a little bit of a fall off of that moving forward, and additionally, with them being such a good 3-point shooting team, they also give it up from 3-point range as well. They're allowing opponents to shoot north of 37.5% from 3-point range. They're 324th in all of college basketball with this regard. I do think that for this Miami of Ohio team, with them now having to hit the road a little bit more as well, that's going to be a little bit of an issue as well, because for Miami of Ohio, while they shoot it so well from 3-point range when they're at home, when they do hit the road, that's where things really become a little bit more testy for them as well. So they're shooting 43+% from 3-point range at home, 31% on the road. I do think the Ball State, a team that has been giving up a little bit too much from 3-point range themselves, they're going to be able to do a solid job putting the clamps down. I do think that with this Ball State team, they're going to be able to win that battle on the glass, and with Ball State at home allowing opponents to shoot from 3-point range more in that neighborhood about 34 or so percent, that they find a way to be able to get the job done. So that by total at a 145.5, so at the 146, I am in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay the point with Ball State. 6-9, 6-10 on the betting board. It is Eastern Michigan on the road against Toledo. Toledo is a 10.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 152. I said Toledo is just a 7.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points for Toledo. This is just not the same 3-point shooting team that they have been in past years. Toledo typically finds really good 3-point shooting. It's not to say that they're like some sort of an awful 3-point shooting team or anything like that, but they're just more close to country average. They're shooting about 32.5% from 3-point range. You've had Sonny Wilson do a nice job splashing in there 15.5 points per contest, and he shoots about 39.5% from 3-point range. Sam Luce, he shoots 46% from the outside, 13.5 points per contest, but these are your only of your guys that average more than 5.3 points per game. They're shooting above 25.5% from 3-point range. That's a little bit of an issue. You do have a holes greater than some of its parts rebounding approach with Wilson, Sam Lewis, along Javon Simmons, all three being able to combine for about 15 or so rebounds per game, and the team does a nice job building it out by committee. And the one thing that I do like about Toledo, they don't get out of sorts with the ball. They're a top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per per possession basis, but I do like what I'm seeing on this Eastern Michigan team. You've got the two guys that come in from DePaul who have been rock solid. Jalen Terry has been your main three-point shooter and your main overall scorer, as he's been able to give you about 15 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists per contest. Right now, he's shooting 37% from 3. Deshaun Nelson, he's a 6'8" combo player that shoots more around about 28% from 3, but 15.5 points, 5.5 boards from him as well. And then Christian Henry has been able to give a little bit more, shall we say, facilitation to the backcourt. Also shoots 35% from 3, but about 3.5 assists per contest. It's an Eastern Michigan team that they are absolutely brutal with their three-point shooting defense. They are outside the top 350 with that regard. Opponents are shooting 38.5% from the outside against them, but I do think that for Eastern Michigan, a team that has become more league average in terms of being able to generate turnovers, that's going to be boding well for them. This has been an Eastern Michigan team that has done a nice job not allowing a whole bunch of second chances, albeit on their first chance opportunities. They do need to be a little bit better defensively there as well, but I also like the fact that Jalen Billingsley has been able to give you about 5 boards, 11 points per contest. It's a bit of a top-heavy Eastern Michigan team, but you also have Yusef Jihad, who's able to be a nice outside threat, being able to shoot about 36% from three-point range. Overall, I take a look at this spot, and I do think that though Toledo should be able to get the job done, still not a great rebounding team, still a team that always leaves something to be desired on defense, and legitimately, both of these teams leave quite a bit of something to be desired on defense. So, circumstance where I did set my total at a 155.5, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Eastern Michigan at an A+, and with regards to this total, even though Toledo's a little bit down with their three-point shooting, do you think that both of these defenses are going to be very leaky, to say the least? So, in on the over, and I'm in on the points with Eastern Michigan. 6-11, 6-12 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up, Bowling Green is going to be on the road facing off against Western Michigan, and Western Michigan is a favorite at 3.5 points. Total this game between 150.5 to a 151, and I wrote up the under. I set my total at 146.5. Bowling Green overall is 66th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Get them away from home, though, and they're more around about 140th. And for Bowling Green, they've been relatively solid with regards to their three-point shooting. Do think that that's going to be drying up a little bit moving forward. This has been a Western Michigan unit that has been very fascinating, to say the least, with regards to their defense, as they're allowing opponents to shoot only about 30% from three-point range at home, and it skyrockets up to about 39.5% away from home. But Western Michigan has also been one of your top rebound rate teams among mid-majors in all of college basketball. Owen Lobsinger has been able to do a nice job supplying the team with 6 boards. He's got versatility and is able to pop it from 3. Gives you 12 plus points per contest. It has been a bunch that has dealt with quite a few injuries, but they've been able to persevere despite it. And then on the flip side, you've got a Bowling Green team that they did lose so much from a season ago. They've done a nice job of being able to replenish some of those pieces, as their main man has been able to give them about 16.5 points per contest, and Marcus Johnson throws in there about 4 or so rebounds per game. Jamal Felt has been able to give you 5 rebounds per game as well. And for this Bowling Green team, it's just a little bit mix and match at this point, with Sam Towns being out of the fold due to injury. You don't have anyone other than Felt that really gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. They've been able to get quite a bit of production in terms of backcourt from Javante Campbell, who's been able to give you 16 points, 3 assists per contest, but it is a team that I have a little bit of trepidation with. I did set Western Michigan as a result as a 4.5 point favorite, so one of these circumstances where I'm going to be willing to lay with them, as they've been able to get quite a bit of production out of Markai Strickland, who's been able to supply 12 points per contest. With Western Michigan, if you do have trepidation with this team, it is that they've been lacking a main point guard all season long, but getting back Chancey Willis, who was dealing with an injury, came up from the non-D1 ranks, that really should alleviate that. He has had 5 plus assists in all 5 of the games that he's played in thus far this season. Now, he's also had 3 plus turnovers in 4 of those 5 games as well, but that's really been able to elevate this Western Michigan team, and we've seen it with this Bowling Green unit just being held down with regards to their offense. They have now scored 71 points or fewer in 2 of their last 3 games against Division I opponents. They were able to get north of 100 against Morgan State, but, well, this Morgan State team a little bit less than savory, and if you want to date it back a little bit further, the team has scored 71 points or fewer in all but 2 out of their last 7 games against C1 teams. It's a Western Michigan team that has been held to 71 or fewer in 3 out of their last 4 games, and 73 or fewer in every one of them as well. I do think that this is going to be a game that's going to be a bit more muted with regards to scoring, even though Todd Simon's Bowling Green teams always like to play a little bit more up-tempo. So I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4 with Western Michigan, and wrote up the under, set my total 146.5. 613, 614 on the betting board. Florida is playing us to Tennessee. Tennessee is an underdog of 2.5 points. So on this game, you're going to be finding it at a 149.5 to a 150. Seeing a lot of 2s. We're seeing a few straight 2.5s out there as well, but circumstance where I did set Florida as a 2.5 point favorite. Right now with those 2s, we'll be willing to lay the deuce with them for this Florida team. They're still one of the more balanced teams. They're going to find in all of college basketball a top 25 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, and the same does go for Tennessee. And Tennessee has been able to put the clamps down on defense. As much as we want to talk about the offense, they are the number 1 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and in their road games, they're allowing 3.2 points fewer per 100 possessions than any other team in all of college basketball. but I do look at the overall balance that you've got for this Florida team. I think that it's going to be a really nice elixir, coupled with the fact that this Florida team just has so much down low. You've got Alex Condon, who leads the way with about 7.5 rebounds per game, but you've had Ruben Chanilu, who's been able to give you about 6.5 boards per contest, Thomas Howell, Will Richard, Elijah Martin, all these guys give you 5+ rebounds per game, and that's ultimately where I think that this battle is going to be won. On the glass, it's a Florida team that, while they're not quite Tennessee, who's allowing 24.3% three-point shooting, they've been able to do a nice job of being able to cut teams off from the outside. You've been having down low Igor Milicic do a really nice job with his overall versatility for a Tennessee team that they themselves are number 6 in the country with regards to rebound percentage. Florida is number 3. Jazz Lanier, he's been that main man for this Tennessee with about 20.5 points per contest, shooting 46.5% from 3, and though this Tennessee team is really good at being able to guard the three-point line, I do think that, once again, that percentage of 24.3%, we're going to see a little bit of regression there. Zakai Ziegler is someone that I really like at the point guard spot, 8 assists per game, but a little bit north of 3 turnovers per game, and I do think that just that home court environment out there in the SEC is going to take a little bit of hold in this game with Florida. Love what I'm seeing out of Martin along with Walter Clayton. These two guys are combining for a little bit over 32 points per contest. You've got these guys going off for about 7 assists, 3 steals per game, and Florida's really cut down on the turnovers as well. They're only turning the ball over about 11 times per contest. This is a Tennessee team that they've been right around that 11 turnover per game average as well, and even though Felix Opara has been pretty solid down low, I think that the overall size that you've got with this Florida team and the overall length that you've got along the perimeter as well is going to be affecting this Tennessee team just enough for this Florida team to be able to get the job done. I think that Florida got a little bit of a wake-up call against Kentucky a few days ago on the road, so I do look at this spot, and I do think that you've got a Florida team that gets the job done. I'm willing to lay up to 2 with them. I do think that this is going to be more of a defense-oriented game, even though Florida loves to play up and down. They're a top 75 team with regards to total possessions per game. Tennessee, a little bit more of a slower team, and both of these teams have just really excelled on the defensive side of things. So did sell my total 146.5, like the under, and I'm willing to lay up to deuce here with Florida. 6:15, 6:16 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up. This is Kentucky. They're going to be on the road going against Georgia, and Old Ugga does find themselves as a 2.5 to a 3-point home underdog. So this game is 156.5. I said Georgia's 1-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them outright on the money line with this Georgia unit. They have been so supremely good with regards to their defense at home, a top 30 team. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and this is a Kentucky team that they do see their offense drop off quite a bit when they do at the road. Kentucky overall this season, a top 5 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. That falls to 111th though when they're away from home, and Kentucky does not force any ball pressure whatsoever. They are 362nd in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis when they're away from home, and that's really been the main kryptonite for this Georgia team. Georgia thus far this season is turning the ball over about 13.3 times per contest. That'll allow them to be able to flow a little bit more freely on offense. For Georgia, Asa Newell has been tremendous. 7 boards, 15.5 points, a little bit over a steal and a block per contest. Dakota Lafew has been that main outside force, shooting 40% from 3, 12.5 points per contest. But Silas Demery is chipping in there about 12 points per contest. Deshaun Montgomery, who was missing for much of the season, he actually followed with Dakota Lafew on over from Mount St. Mary's. He's been averaging 13.5 points since he's gone into the lineup as well. And for Kentucky, Kobe Bryant has been absolutely amazing. One of the best three-point shooters in all of college basketball, 52.3%. Have to wonder if that dries up a little bit down low. It's been amazing what we've gotten out of Amari Williams, 8.5 boards, 10.5 points per contest, but really, other than Austin Carr, you don't have a ton more down low. Brandon Garrison has been okay with about 5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, and I like Ortega away, who's done for this offense. 16 points, right around about a steal and a half per contest, while Lamont Butler has been your main facilitator with about 4.5 assists per game. But I think that this could be one of those games where Kirk Risa, a steady Eddie ball handler this season, his loss might be creeping up just a little bit more. And I do think that Georgia does a good job guarding the three-point arc, finds a way to be able to get the job done in a game that's going to be a little bit more defense-oriented. You've got a Georgia team that's really been able to step up defensively, 68 points or fewer allowed in 4 of their last 5 games. So I do think that Georgia slows things down just a skoge in this one, set them as a 1-point favorite. So I do like them outright on the money line, made my total 155 as well. So I'm also in on this total under. 6:17, 6:18 on the betting board. Arizona's on the road against West Virginia. West Virginia, a home underdog of 3 points in your total on this game. It is 145, and I like what I saw against Cincinnati a few days ago from Arizona. I could only set them as 1.5 point favorite. I don't necessarily want West Virginia outright on the money line, but I'm going to be willing to take the points, as with West Virginia, it hasn't mattered what has happened with this team. They lose Tucker DeVries for some time, and there's a chance he might play in this game. And if Tucker DeVries does play, I think that he's going to be much less than 100%, much like Armani Hansberry did play in the team's previous game, but he came on off the bench. He wasn't necessarily super effective, but what I like for this West Virginia team to be able to keep them lively, Eduardo Andre 3000, 2.3 blocks, 5 boards, 5.5 points per game, and then Javon Small has been able to come up very big, 19.5 points, 5.5 boards, 4.5 assists, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. Just a West Virginia team that's a tough customer, because they don't necessarily do that one thing like amazing, but they do everything relatively well, and they have just put the hammer lockdown on teams. This West Virginia team has allowed 63 points or fewer in every one out of their last 6 games, albeit they already played against Arizona a little bit earlier in the season. That was in the Battle for Atlantis tournament, so that makes things all the more interesting, and West Virginia pulled out that game in overtime, albeit that was with Tucker DeVries being their top scorer, but Caleb Love is a guy that you just don't know what you're going to be able to get out of him night in, night out. He has been able to supply this team with 14 plus points per contest, but he's also shooting 30.5% from three-point range. It's an Arizona team that, to their credit, has been much better on defense this season, ranking in the top 40 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You've got relatively good balance with regards to rebounding, which they have needed with 7'2" Monteuves Crivas missing with an injury since the beginning of the month of December, so that's been a tad bit of an issue. But Trey Townsend, he's able to give you about 4.5 boards per contest. You've been able to have Jaden Bradley chip in there a double-figure amount of points. KJ Lewis, 2.5 assists, 4.5 boards, 7 points per contest, so he's got good versatility there. I do think that Arizona going to be out for revenge in this one, but I think that you're looking at very much a nip and tuck game with an Arizona team that isn't the same team offensively that they have been in past years, shooting just 31% from three-point range, albeit it is a team that, once again, they've been able to do a much better job with regards to being able to guard the three-point line. In Arizona, number 8 in the country with regards to rebound percentage. I don't know if Eduardo Andre is going to quite be able to match up with that with West Virginia, 168th with regards to rebound percentage, but I do think that West Virginia, especially being at home, holds in this game. I did set my total at 147.5. I think that this game does come down to late game fouling, and I do think that Arizona going to be running a little bit more tempo in this game, so I'm going to be going in on this total over, but I'm willing to take those points with West Virginia. 619, 620 on the betting board. Buffalo is going to be playing us Ohio. The Bobcats of Ohio are anywhere between a 9.5 to a 10.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 152.5 to 153, and I did set Ohio as a 12-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Well, Ty Dunn has been as versatile as he has been for this Buffalo team. He's been able to give out north of 4.5 assists per contest. He's throwing in there north of 5 rebounds per game, so he's been able to give this team a whole heck of a lot of something. He, for one, is not shooting it very well from three-point range, as he is shooting less than 25% from three-point range, and he currently leads the country in terms of turnovers for any qualifying Division I player. He has turned the ball over 4.6 times per contest, so that has been very much less than savory. He's up to about 27.5% three-point shooting, so we'll give a little bit of credit there, but Buffalo as a whole, they shoot 31.2% from three, despite the fact that Ryan Sable has been your main three-point shooter with 7 threes per contest, shooting 43.5% from the outside, 16.5 points, also shoots north of 91% at the free throw line, but pretty much everyone else on this team, other than Tim Oba, who takes about a half a three per contest, shooting below 32.5% from the outside. You really just don't get a lot of rebounding with this Buffalo team either. They are in the bottom 35 in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. And if you're just looking at overall rebound percentage, Buffalo right now checking in 332nd in all of college basketball. It's an Ohio team that leaves something to be desired on the glass as well. Ohio more on 284th with this regard, but you've got the AJ Brown along the AJ Clayton pair of guys that have been able to combine for north of 27 points per contest. Clayton has been your main man down low. He's been able to give you 5 plus rebounds per game. Meanwhile, Clayton has been one of the better sharpshooters for the team as well, shooting about 35% from three-point range. Brown shoots more like 40% from three, able to supply the team with 12 points per contest. And Jackson Pavelski running some good clean offense, 5.8 assists to 2.6 turnovers per game, 12 points per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range this season, and it's an Ohio team that they're going to give it up from three-point range. They've been in the bottom 10 nationally with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but again, other than Sable, you really just don't have a lot of outside forces for this Buffalo team, and I do think that with Ohio, even though they have been, a team has been a little bit hit or miss with regards to some of their shooting as well, I do think that they're going to be able to do a better job on the glass. Additionally, this is is a team that does rank in the top 150 with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. I do think that this is going to be an up and down game. You've got a Buffalo team that has really been outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, it's an Ohio team that's up their tempo just a little bit. Not necessarily playing at warp speed or anything like that, but 65th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Have a Buffalo unit that is more in the neighborhood about 53rd. So did set my total 160. I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 12 here with Ohio. 621, 622 on the betting board. It is Pittsburgh, and they're on the road. They're facing off against Duke, and Duke does find themselves as a favorite of 15 points, and your total on this game between 143 to 143.5. Circumstance where I did set Pittsburgh as an underdog, more around the neighborhood of 13.5 points. So being able to get a 15, I'm going to be willing to take those points. With Duke, it's been an incredibly impressive defense. This team is in the top 10 nationally with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and as a matter of fact, I actually wrote up the under for this game as well, so I set my total more around a 137.5. Pittsburgh has been pretty solid with their perimeter defense. They're a top 55 team in the country with allowing opponents to shoot only 30% from three-point range. Duke has been even better, allowing opponents to shoot just 28.9% from three-point range. And for this Pittsburgh team, their main two guards have been very rock solid, and Ishmael Get along with Jalen Lowe. Maybe they combine for 35 points per game. You've got Lowe shooting 88% of the free throw line, and from three-point range, more around 28% from three-point range. He's given out 6 assists, 2 steals per contest. Pittsburgh does a nice job not really beating themselves, only about 10 turnovers per contest. So in terms of ball security, a top 75 team in all of college basketball. It's a Pittsburgh team that does a solid job on the glass, but not quite the same job as Duke, as Duke has that guy by the name of Cooper Flagg, and he's been pretty stinking good. My lone gripe with him was the lack of outside shooting, and he's really been able to improve that over the last few games as well. 17.5 points, 8.5 boards, 3.5 assists, a steal and a half, and a block and a half per contest. This guy is doing absolutely everything, and Colin Kneppel does a good job as sort of that off-the-ball scorer. He's been able to give the team 12.5 points per contest, and has shown to be able to give a little bit of facilitation as well. He's going out right around about 3 assists per game. Tyrese Proctor throws in there 11.5 points. She's 42% for three-point range as well, but Isaiah Evans really is the X factor for this team. He was a little bit banged up towards the beginning part of the season, now shooting 50% from three-point range. So I've been loving what I've been seeing out of him. Zion James has good versatility, a little bit over a steal, 8 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. So there's a lot of good there. Mason Gillis, I was expecting a little bit more from, but he's still a veteran force that is able to help stabilize this team. For this Duke unit, they are 5th in the country in terms of opponents' field goal shooting percentage as well. Do think that this is going to be a low-scoring slog. I do think that Pittsburgh has enough with someone like a Guillermo Diaz-Graham being able to chip in there 5 rebounds per game, Zach Austin giving you a block and a half per contest, that they do remain lively. So this is a game where I'm going to be willing to take the 15 here with Pittsburgh. And with regards to write-up, I wrote up the under as I set my total more around to 137.5. 623, 624 on the betting board. Louisville is playing us at Clemson. Clemson is a underdog of 3 to 4 points. Total on this game, it is 145.5, and I know that myself and Mid-Major Matt were talking about this Clemson team, and I'm going to be willing to take them in this spot. I set them as a 2.5 point underdog, so being able to get the 4, going to be willing to dive in there. Maybe I'm just a schmuck for thinking this, but again, I do think that Louisville is going to see a little bit of an uptick with regards to their 3-point shooting. This team continues to shoot below 30.5% from 3-point range, and no, I don't think that this is a team that should be shooting 40% from 3-point range or anything like that. They're better than being outside the top 310 in all of college basketball. Chucky Upburn has done a nice job at the point guard spot, 5.5 assists, 15.5 points, 2.5 steals per contest. It's a Louisville team that has been, just as the season goes along, doing a better job of not turning it over. Rain Smith, though, has been the lone guy on the roster that's shooting above 33% from 3-point range, 38.5% from the outside, 13.5 points per contest. And despite the fact that Keshawn Pryor is out for the season, you do have Javon Hadley, who's able to give you 7.5 rebounds per game. But I do think that Ian Shefflin wins that battle down low for Clemson. And it's a Clemson unit that, are they amazing with regards to their defense? I think that would be a little bit of an overstretch, but at the same time, they've been able to do a pretty solid job in their own right, 73rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You've got a Louisville team that's been neither here nor there with that aspect as well, 94th in the country, and when they're at home, they are well outside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But I do think that with Clemson, they are going to be able to find some good open looks for Chase Hunter, who's been the main guy in the backcourt for this team, giving you 17 points, 2.5 assists for 3-point range. He's been bombing it at a 42% clip, and Shefflin, who I mentioned before, 4, 13.5 points, 11 boards. He's also shooting about 32.5% from 3. Victor Locken at 6'10" gives you 2 blocks. He shoots 38.5% from 3-point range. All sorts of versatility and size with this Clemson team. I do think that's going to cause fits for Louisville. Again, I do think that Louisville is going to see some positivity with their 3-point shooting, and Clemson just allowing opponents to shoot about 32% from 3-point range. That's about country average with that regard, and I do think that Clemson is going to be able to hold in there. In the end, I do think that Louisville, with that home court advantage, they do find a way to be able to get the job done. These are a pair of teams that aren't necessarily looking to gun it. These are also not necessarily teams that are playing super duper slowly either, with Louisville about 150th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So did make my total a 144.5. On top of the 3+, I'm going to be willing to take it with Clemson. Seeing this total north of a 145, I'm in on the under. 625, 626 on the betting board. Syracuse plays close to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, an underdog of a point, and your total on this game, it is 156. I did set Syracuse as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the very small number for Syracuse. The J.J. Starlin injury has, without a question, really limited this team, but I like what I'm seeing out of Donnie Freeman along with Eddie Lampkin down low. I think that this team can be able to win the battle on the glass, as you got Bay and Nongo for the Georgia Tech team, was giving you 12.7 boards per contest. Actually popped a few threes last year. Hasn't done as much of that this year, but with Freeman, he gives you about 8 boards, 13.5 points per game. Lampkin is actually a relatively good passer for his size. 2.5 assists, 10 points, 7.5 rebounds. So I've been liking what I've been seeing there. But Syracuse last year was actually really good at forcing turnovers. They are now in the bottom 45 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis this year. And they're shooting 29.6% from 3-point range. Chris Bell last year, he gave you 12 points on about 40% 3-point shooting, down to about 10 points with 27.5% 3-point shooting. This year, Jair Davis, he does a little bit of everything except for shoot threes, 8.5 points, 5 boards. He's shooting right now about 18% from 3-point range, and Jaquan Carlos shoots 17% from 3-point range. Even though he does a nice job being able to dish it out once again, you could use a little bit more there, but for Georgia Tech, it's just been a very strange bunch in general as well. They lose that game to begin the season against North Florida. They do now have their main pieces back in the backcourt, as they were dealing with a little bit of an injury to Xavier McCollum, who's been able to average double figures, as he's a little bit more of a scorer. You've had Nathan George, who's your main facilitator, giving you about 6.3 assists and 2.2 turnovers per contest, but he's only been shooting about 30% from 3. McCollum shoots more around 40% from the outside, but it is a Georgia Tech team that does leave quite a bit of something to be desired on the glass as well. Duncan Boom Boom Powell has been able to give you about 5 or so rebounds per game, along with what you've been able to get out of Bay and Nongo, but past that, not getting a whole heck of a lot else. And this is just a Georgia Tech team that has been not necessarily doing anything horribly, but they're not really excelling at anything either, if that makes sense. Because for Georgia Tech right now, in terms of their rebound rate, they're checking in about 108th in all of college basketball. In terms of being able to take care of the ball, they're okay. They're not great. They're not terrible. But I do think that in the end, Syracuse does find a way to be able to get the job done. They're more of a top 75 team with regards to rebound percentage. And this is also a Georgia Tech team that's not really generating a lot of turnovers themselves. To the credit of Georgia Tech, they've been able to get past the 80-point plateau in 4 of their last 5 games. For Syracuse, they've been able to get to at least 70 in 4 of their last 5, but they themselves give up at least 75 points in 4 of their last 5 games, so makes it an interesting circumstance with regards to the total. I did set mine at a 152.5, so along with Syracuse, do think that things get a little bit more muted with these offenses. Neither of these teams really in the top 50 with regards to total possessions per game, so in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay the point here with Syracuse. 627, 628 on the betting board. Tulane is on the road against UAB. The Blazers are 8.5 to 9-point favorites, so on this game between 158 to 158.5, and the UAB, I did make them a favorite of 8 points, so here at the 8.5, 9, going to be willing to take the points with Tulane. For Tulane, they do a solid job of being able to take care of the ball. They're only turning the ball over about 11 times per contest, and I like what Rowan Brumba has been able to bring to the backcourt. Comes in from Georgetown. He's been able to give you about 4.5, 5 assists per contest from 3-point range. He's been able to shoot it at about 32.5% clip, 14 points per contest, and Caleb Banks has a lot of versatility. 6'7" wing who's been able to chip in there 8 boards, 18.5 points per game. He's shooting about 37.5% from 3-point range, while Cam Williams is your main 3-point shooter at about 42.5% from the outside. But for Tulane, they've really taken on a little bit of different identity this year. Last 2 seasons, they were one of the fastest teams in all of college basketball. Top 10 team with regards to total possessions per game. This year, Tulane, they're still playing relatively up-tempo, but they're more around about 117th in the country. Meanwhile, this UAB team, they have been the team that's been really running in and gunning it. Top 68 team in the country with regards to total possessions per game, and both of these teams are leaving quite a bit of something to be desired on defense. Now, Tulane is allowing opponents to shoot less than 30% from 3-point range, but a little bit more vulnerable vulnerable on the interior, and they're certainly giving up a lot of second and third chance opportunities for Tulane, ranking about 71st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. For UAB, this team checks in more around about 179th, and it certainly does take a drop off when they're on the road. At home, they've been able to give up about 16, 17 points fewer per 100 possessions, but they should be able to control things down low with the XL Lendyborg and what he's been able to provide. Man stands right around about 6'9" or so, and he's been able to give the team 17 plus points, 10 plus boards. He's been able to shoot in the mid to high 30s from 3-point range, and that's big because this has been a UAB team that just really has not shot it well from 3-point range this season, headlined by Alejandro Vasquez. Don't call his name because he's shooting 28.5% from the outside, 11.5 points per contest. As a team, UAB shoots 32.5% from 3. They don't have an over-reliance on the 3 ball, and that's really where Tulane has been able to shine through with regards to their defense. So I actually do think that this is going to be a relatively good matchup for this UAB team. And for UAB, their best offense has really been grabbing an offensive rebound. For UAB, they are once again in the top 15 in all of college basketball with regards to percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. You just don't have the same thing for this Tulane team. And for Tulane, they've really been struggling in terms of being able to hold teams to just one shot on defense as well. With regards to opponents' missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, it's a Tulane team that they're ranking about 106th in all of college basketball, allowing opponents to get about 26% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. So do you think that that's going to be a bit of an issue? And you've got Jabari McGee on the flip side for this UAB team, give you about 2.5 assists, 10.5 points, shoots 40% from 3-point range, has been a UAB team that's really been able to find their bearings with regards to their defensive approach as well, as they've been able to give up 74 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games, while their offense certainly has been rock solid, 75 plus in each of the last 5 games. Meanwhile, for Tulane, after they had a little bit of a rut with regards to their offense to begin the season, this team has now gone past the 80-point plateau in 4 of their last 5 games. So a little bit of an interesting circumstance here. I do think that this number has gone a little bit too far. UAB has been a little bit lax with regards to their defense, but for Tulane, with them slowing down their tempo a little bit more, with them being able to do a good job of being able to guard the 3-point line, I think that that's going to be just enough to be able to hold this total under, set by total of 156. So in on the under end and north of 8, taking those points with Tulane. 629, 630 on the bang board. UT San Antonio, meet the Roadrunners, play host to Tulsa, and Tulsa finds themselves as an underdog of 5 points total on this game. It is 154. I did set UTSA as a 7.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. UTSA has one of the best scores that you're going to find in all of college basketball, and Primo Spears, who's been much more efficient this year. For Mr. Primo Spears, he's giving you 21 points, 3.5 assists per contest, top 10 in the country in terms of points per game, shooting about 33% from 3-point range. Just for a man that shot 30% or fewer from 3-point range in each of his first 3 years of college basketball. And this is just a Tulsa team that they aren't really finding too much in terms of offense, defense, rebounding, too much of anything. I wish I could call it anything else, but I mean, this is a Tulsa team that has really been having a rough time of it in general. Now, they are finding a little bit of a nice find in freshman Ian Smeekle. Hopefully I said that correctly. 6.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. He's had himself a couple relatively nice games, 5+ rebounds in 4 of the last 5 games, but even with that, this Tulsa team is about 200th in the country with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. They are outside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And other than Keston Willis, you're not really getting a lot of outside scoring either. This Tulsa team is 271st in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're in the top 80 in terms of total possessions per game. Willis shoots 38.5% from 3-point range. And Israel Barnes does shoot 36.5% from 3-point range as well. But we haven't seen him in darn near a month. Braden Carrington has been able to give this team about 8 points, 5 boards, a little bit over a steal per contest as well, but Tulsa not really forcing a lot of ball pressure as well, which is big because this is a UTSA team that has been a little bit sloppy with it this year. 13 turnovers per game. It is a UTSA team that is very much looking to play a little bit more up-tempo as well. This is the old Austin Clonch style where he was at Nichols. They were always really good at being able to force turnovers for this UTSA team, about 50th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and this has been a UTSA team that has been a top 75 unit in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They dealt with a few injuries, but now they're starting to get right with Terrion Joseph, top scorer from Southern last year, coming back into the mix. He's given the team 14 plus points each out of the last 3 games, so looks like he's back to being himself. Damari Monsanto was one of the best 3-point shooters in all of college basketball a few seasons ago, giving you 40% 3-point shooting. He's up to about 10.5 points per game with his UTSA team as well. In a cover spot, they shoot 81.9% at the free throw line. That's a top 8 mark in all of college basketball. And then Genevia Smith is able to give you 8+ rebounds per game as well. This is a Tulsa team that's really fallen on some tough times with regards to both their offense and their defense. As for the Tulsa unit, when they go up against D1 opponents, as they've played against a few non-D1 teams, they have given up north of 75 points in all but 2 of their games since the beginning of the month of December, and those 2 teams that they've played against were SWAC opponents. Meanwhile, for UTSA, they themselves have given up at least 75 points in each of their last 4 games against D1 competition. So to think that you get a game that is run and gunned, I set my total at 157.5. I do like the over and 1 to lay up to 7 with UTSA. 631, 632 on the betting board. Iowa plays us in Nebraska. Nebraska does find themselves as an underdog of 3.5 to 4 points. Dawn's game is 159, and I just set my total at 157.5. I'm going to be in on this total under. For Nebraska, this team is playing some very solid defense. They're a top 65 unit with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and recognize that this Iowa team back in the top 45 in terms of their total possessions per game, what have you. But I do think that Nebraska does find a way to hold in there. Now, with Iowa, that home court advantage over there at Carver Hawkeye Arena, I think is going to be very prevalent in this game. It's a big reason why I did set them as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it, but Nebraska up to 19th in the country. There's points allowed on a per possession basis, and with the Iowa unit, they're a little bit better defensively than they have been in past years, and they're also giving up 15.9 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than in a road or neutral court setting as well, so that does help them out just a skoge in this one. For Iowa, it's not even like they've been the most amazing three-point shooting team this season, as Peyton Sanford, he's only shooting in the 33, 34 percentile, but he's been able to do a nice job giving the team 16 plus points per contest. He throws in their 5 boards, a few assists, as Brock Harding has actually been the main facilitator for the team. 5.8 assists and 2.2 turnovers per game, and despite the up-tempo nature of Iowa, only turning the ball about 10 times per contest. Now they are shooting as a collective about 38% from three-point range, and as a matter of fact, for this Iowa team, out of your top 6 scorers, Peyton Sanford is the only one that is shooting below 40% from three-point range. Even Owen Freeman, who's your main big man, 6 boards, 2 blocks per contest, he's been able to shoot about 40% from three-point range. Josh Dix has been really good from the outside as well, but I feel like Nebraska is going to do an okay job of being able to guard the three-point line. I recognize that that might not necessarily be their main forte with regards to their defense because, again, they've been able to do such a great job of being able to generate turnovers. But with this Nebraska unit, Bryce Williams has been a really good constant for this team as he's supplying the team with 18.5 points, shoots 40.5% from three-point range. Nebraska as a whole, they shoot 34% from 3, but in a road/neutral court setting, they're hardly shooting above 30% from three-point range. So you do have your issues there, but for Nebraska, they allow opponents to shoot 33.3% from distance away from home. They're 33rd in the country, actually, as a matter of fact, in three-point shooting defense. So that's a lot of threes, but what are you going to be able to get out of Connor Essegian? His last 5 games, he has scored 15, 2, 7, 20, and 2 points. So, I mean, he's all over the place, and he really doesn't do anything other than launch threes, and he does shoot about 40% from three-point range to his credit, and with this Nebraska team, it's a whole is greater than the sum of its parts sort of approach with regards to rebounding. You've got one guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, Burke Tunsell, who's been able to do a nice job. He gave you about 6.5 to 7 rebounds per game, but past that, you just have a mismatch of different guys that be able to do a relatively solid job of being able to reel in their rebounds. Andrew Morgan is giving you about 4.5 or so rebounds per game. Braxton Maya gives you some size, and Iowa is about 300th in the country with regards to rebound percentage, but they've got a close to 49.5% rebound percentage at home. On the road, it's just absolutely ghastly, and I do think that Nebraska is going to be able to slow this game down a little bit more. This is a Nebraska team, though, that, by the way, may have given up fewer than 72 points in pretty much all but one of their games thus far this season, and the 72 that they gave up, that was against North Florida. North Florida, one of the more intense offenses that you're going to find in all of college basketball, so I think that this is an interesting spot. I do think that Nebraska's defense is going to be rock solid, but I do think that in the end, Iowa finds a way to get the job done. Said Iowa was a 5.5 point favorite, going to be willing to lay that number, and did set my total at a 157.5. I'm in on the under as well. We go 633, 634 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up, Illinois, Chicago, UIC. They are going to be on the road against Missouri State. And Missouri State is a 2.5 point favorite. The last game is 139.5 to a 140, and I wrote up the over. I set my total at a 145.5. You've got a UIC team that does rank in the top 85 nationally with regards to total possessions per game, and it's a Missouri State team that has been able to do a relatively solid job on the glass, especially when they've been at home. And for Missouri State, they shoot 40.5% from three-point range at home, and both of these teams have been leaking oil with regards to their three-point shooting defense. Both of these teams outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. For UIC, while they do turn the ball over about 13 times per contest, Missouri State, not necessarily the world's greatest team at being able to generate turnovers, as you've had Sasa Sini be able to give you about 8.5, 9 rebounds per game down low, with Javon Jackson has been the main scorer, 13 points, shoots 36% from three-point range, but Jordan Mason shoots 38% from three-point range. Tyam Freeman, he and Mason, they've been able to combine for about 19.5 points per contest. He shoots closer to 40% 36% from three-point range, and Modestos Concreros has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game as well. So UIC, pretty rock solid down low. It's a Missouri State team, though, that they do a nice job being able to get those second and third chances with having a pair of guys give you 7.5 rebounds per game that were at the 91 ranks last season. And Michael Osi Bonusu, along with Jalen Hampton, these two guys combined for a little bit over 15 rebounds per contest and right around about 3 steals per game as well. With Missouri State, they do shoot just 66% at the free throw line, but they shoot 35% from three-point range. Des White has been your main guy, 17 points on 37% three-point shooting, but Zaxton King has been a king for this team. He's supplying 9 points, shooting 36% from three, albeit we have seen that tail off a little bit, just 21 points in the last 4 games. But I do think that for Missouri State, they do a relatively solid job against an Illinois-Chicago team that has been well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I did set my line at 3 just because Missouri State a little bit better at being able to take away the ball than UIC, but this has been a UIC team that has been a very, very constant force with regards to our offense. Last time this UIC team did not score north of 70 points in a game, you have to go all the way back to December 1st, and for this UIC team, they've been able to break the 70-point plateau in all but 2 other games thus far this season. Meanwhile, it's a Missouri State team now, while they're offense has been a little bit mediocre recently, I do think that they're going to be able to find some open looks against this UIC defense. I wrote up the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 2.5 with Missouri State. Made them a 3-point favorite. 635, 636 on the betting board. Oklahoma State plays us to Kansas State. Kansas State is a 2 to 2.5 point underdog. Your total on this game is between 146.5 to 147. I set Oklahoma State as a 1.5 point favorite. I do think that this talent of Kansas State is going to be able to keep them lively in this one. I very much soured on Kansas State, and I'll be honest here, I'm a little bit surprised that the bookmakers agreed with me in setting Oklahoma State as a favorite in this spot, but I'm willing to take 2+ here with Kansas State. Kansas State just has too much talent to be this bad. I wish I could put it any other way, but David Ngesson, he has been rock solid down low, 7.5 boards, 13.5 points per game. He's been able to pop a few threes as well at about a 31% clip, and for Kansas State, you'd like to see them be a little bit better with regards to their ball handling and ball security, but it's not like they've been terrible with regards to turnovers, 12.5 turnovers per game. Doug McDaniel down with his 3-point shooting to about 23.5% and 62% at the free throw line. That's part of the issue for Kansas State. This Kansas State team is right now shooting 66.5% at the free throw line. Now of your top 4 scorers, only one that shoots about 62% at the charity stripe. Brandon Housen, who's shooting 40% from 3, 12.5 points per contest. And for McDaniel, 2 steals, 4.5 assists per contest. And this has been a Kansas State team that typically when you take a look at just like dysfunctional teams that are not living up to their billing, it's because their defense is just absolutely terrible. I'm not going to call them monsters of Midway or anything like that, but for this Kansas State team, they're a top 125 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, or approximately 101st, and that actually outcomes what you're going to be able to get out of Oklahoma State, who's 112th with this regard. And for Oklahoma State, it's a team under Steve Lutz that is starting to be able to put it together. Marcellus Avery, along with Abdu Uspain, they've been able to combine for about 10.5 rebounds per game. Both of these guys have been nice, solid double-figure scores for Oklahoma State. They only shoot as a collective, though, about 31.5% from three-point range out of your scorers on this team that are giving you north of 1 point per game. You've got 2 guys that are shooting above 33% from three-point range, one of them being Uspain, who I think is taking less than a 3 per contest, so that's a little bit of an issue. Brandon Newman, he shoots 34% from the outside. He's giving you about 7.5 points per contest. You haven't necessarily been able to find that main point guard as Khalil Brantley and Arterio Dean have been taking turns, but Dean has been able to give you about 2 steals per contest, as he actually led all of college basketball with regards to steals per game last season. And I do think that with regards to Oklahoma State, what is going to be so key for them as well is being able to generate some turnovers, as this has been an Oklahoma State team that has been a little bit lackadaisical with the way that they've been guarding the 3-point line, 286 in the country with this regard. It's a Kansas State team that they themselves have been a little bit hit or miss with regards to their defense, as well as they're about 264th in the country with this regard. But I do think that once again, the versatility that you get out of Coleman Hawkins for Kansas State, giving you like 9 points, 6 boards, 3 assists, a steal, a block per contest, keeps them relatively lively. What I think is going to be a little bit of a higher scoring game, did set my total at a 151.5. Right now seeing this total right around about 146.5, 147, and on the over, and we'll take 2+ here with Kansas State. 637, 638 on the betting board. Baylor plays us to Cincinnati. Yes, we are on to Cincinnati, and they're on to being 5 to 5.5 point underdogs. So this game between 139.5 to a 140, and did set my total 142. I'm going to be in on the over in this spot. As for Cincinnati, they've got really good metrics. They're a top 35 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. I have to wonder how much of that was based on the fact that they played a Charmin soft non-conference schedule, and right now they're starting to get a little bit exposed. They lose lose at home against Arizona. They lose that road game against Kansas State, who just went through them a minute or two ago, has been a little bit of a less than impressive unit, so I do have a little bit of trepidation and strife there. Meanwhile, for this Baylor team, they just are so much better at home rather than on the road. They're the number one team in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they're well outside the top 75 when they leave home. You've got Notre Dame be able to give you 15.5 points, 11 rebounds per game. It's a Baylor team as a whole. They shoot about 36.5% from three-point range, but once again, well north of 40% from three-point range at home. That dips below 36% when they are on the road, so that's something that you do want to be looking for. BJ Edgecombe has been able to give you a lot of versatility with VJ Edgecombe. 11.5 points, 6 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals, a block per contest, so love what he's providing. And Jeremy Roach is now shooting 38.5% from distance. He's been able to give the team 13 points per contest. And for Cincinnati, even though this has been a team that has really been able to hunker down defensively, again, they've got metrics that aren't quite the same when they're on the road rather than when they are at home. For Cincinnati, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they check in 38th in the country, but they experience a drop-off of about 13.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. They've been able to have Jizzle James dish out north of 4 assists per contest. He's supplying the team with a double-figure amount of points per game, and after he shot well below 20% from three-point range last season, he's been able to do a much better job shooting about 32% from distance this year. Dan Skillings, he was dealing with injury throughout much of the season. He's been able to supply 12.5 points, 2.5 assists, and a block per contest when he's been out there as well. And for Cincinnati, they do a nice job keeping things clean with regards to their offense. They only turn the ball about 10 times per contest, but in a cover spot, this is also a team that they shoot 63.5% at the free throw line, with Dylan Mitchell down low leading the way with rebounding, 7.5 boards, 12 points per game. He shoots 26.5% at the free throw line. Aziz Bendango, he shoots 66% at the charity stripe, about 2 blocks, 6 rebounds per game. I do think that Cincinnati going to do a solid job on the glass, but again, I do think that Baylor going to be able to find some good looks from three-point range, despite the fact that Cincinnati overall has been a pretty rock-solid defense, and Cincinnati allowing opponents to shoot just 20.5% for three, but Baylor, a completely different offense at home. So my total 142 in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 5.5 here with Baylor. I made them 6-point favorite, 639, 640 on the betting board. Utah's on the road. They're facing off against Iowa State, and Iowa State finds themselves as a pretty sizable favorite at 18.5 to 19 points. With all this game, it is 151, and with Iowa State, go ahead and make them a 15.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Utah, fully recognize that this team is quite a bit different when they are on the road rather than when they are at home, but this has been one of the best three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. They now have Lawson Lovering to be able to help hold up a little bit more down low, as well as he was banged up for the first 5 or so games of the season, but he's been able to step in, give this team a little bit north of 11 points, 5.5 boards per contest. You've got Madsen squared and Gabe, but Mark Madsen right now shooting 45% from three. Gabe Madsen, he's able to give you about 16.5 points, 2.5 assists. He's been shooting about 37% from the outside, while Mongolian Mike has been very versatile for the team. Not too much of a score at about 7.5 points per game, but there's in there 3.5 assists, a steal. He's able to give you sometimes a block or two as well. So I do like this Utah team and the overall depth that you do have. Meanwhile, for Iowa State, this is still a really rock-solid defense. Not quite the same defense than we've seen in past years. I know I'm being nitpicky because this is still a very dominant force, but they're more around 14th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and this is another one of those teams that does see a big boost from their home court, as they're giving up more than 25 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than when they are on the road. For this Utah team, it has been a little bit difficult for them when they've hit the road as well, especially with regards to guarding things on the interior, as their perimeter defense has actually been pretty rock solid, allowing opponents to shoot only about 31.5% from three-point range when they are on the road. But when it comes to just being able to defend down low, and that was something that was a little bit of an issue for Iowa State last season. Last season, you didn't have too much rebounding. They bring in someone in Joshua Jefferson, who's been able to give you 8 rebounds per game. Deshaun Jackson has been able to supply 10.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, and a block per contest. So they've been able to prove that aspect, but for Utah, they allow opponents to shoot 43.5% from two-point range at home. On the road, this expands to well north of 50%, while Mila Mimosilovic has been able to shoot 45.5% from three-point range for the Iowa State team as well. And Iowa State, now a top 10 unit with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. They've really gone northward with that regard, and they've still been able to keep that good, rock-solid defense, giving up 70 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. And as the Utah team has been getting bludgeoned recently on the defensive side of things, 80-plus points allowed in each each of their last 3 games. Utah has been a pretty constant offense. They've been able to get past the 80-point plateau, and now 4 out of their last 6 games. But again, so much of that came at home. On the road, they just have not necessarily been the same unit, and I do think that this Iowa State team still going to be able to do a rock-solid job defensively. I do think that Utah is going to be giving up quite a bit from the perimeter. I do think that this becomes a little bit more of an up-and-down game. Utah, top 75 team in the country with regards to total possessions per game, and this Iowa State offense has really been able to take leaps and bounds forward this season as well. So I did set my total more around a 153.5. I'm going to be in on the over, and I'm only taking anything of 16 plus here with Utah. 641, 642 on the betting board. It is Georgetown on the road against Marquette, and Marquette does find themselves as a double-figure favorite. You're going to be laying 12.5 points with them. Total on this game is 145.5. Semi-line at 10.5. I'm once again in on Georgetown. With Georgetown, this has been one of the top defenses in all of college basketball. They are up to the top 15 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and now they have to go up against a Marquette team that has really been putting down the clamps as well. Now with Marquette, they do leave themselves a little bit vulnerable on the glass. They're well outside the top 175 with regards to rebound percentage. Georgetown should have a little bit of an edge there. And Marquette about 229th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. They've been able to do a good job of being able to guard the 3-point line, and they do a really nice job of just putting you under duress in general. This is not a Georgetown team that's necessarily going to be seeking out turnovers, but they've still been right around about 50th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, Marquette a little bit more willing to gamble for those turnovers. They are number 10 in the country with this regard. But for Marquette, they are going to need to find a way to be able to bottle up Thomas Sorber, who's been able to give this Georgetown team 15.5 points, 8 boards per contest. And Georgetown had a big issue of turning the ball over early on during the season. They've been able to clean up their act a little bit. Still right around about 13 turnovers per game by Kapivi, Malik Mack. They do combine for a little bit over 5 turnovers per game, but Mack is now shooting 39% from 3, 14 points, nearly 5 assists per contest. PV, he throws in there about 4 assists per game, 13.5 points per contest. A little bit of a top-heavy team. Would like to see a little bit more out someone like a Caleb Williams, who's been able to come on strong recently, 5+ points each out of the last 4 games. And for Marquette, it's been the Cam Jones show for this team. He is leading the way with 20.5 points, 6.5 assists, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point for a Marquette team that honestly hasn't been overly impressive from 3-point. They shoot 32.5% from the outside. CV Mitchell shoots 42% from 3, 12 points per contest. You've had about 10 points, 4 boards out of Chase Ross as well, but David Joplin is the only guy that gives you an earth of 5 rebounds per game for the team, 14 points, 5.5 boards. He's only been able to shoot about 30% from 3-point range. You've got relatively good depth. Even someone like Demarius Owens, when he's been out there on the floor, as he's been banged up for a game or two, he's been able to give you some good production. But I do think that in the end, this is going to be a little bit of a sloppier game. Georgetown does have a bit of a tough time turning the ball over. This is a Marquette team, though, that I think is going to have a very tough time stopping Sorber down low. So I do think that you get yourself a game where Marquette probably going to be able to get right around about that 75 or a little bit higher than that mark. They've been able to break the 72-point plateau in pretty much all of their games except for that Dayton game that we saw earlier in the season. So I am going to be willing to set my total at 144.5. I'm in on the under, and here at 11 plus, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Georgetown. 643, 644 on the betting board. This is another game that I wrote up as you've got SIU Edwardsville on the road against Eastern Illinois, and Eastern Illinois is a 2.5 to a 3-point underdog. Total on this game, 132.5. I made Eastern Illinois the 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them right on the money line. For Eastern Illinois, they've been a top 110 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home. They do face off against an Edwardsville team that is a top 175 unit in terms of points allowed per possession, and we've got 2 dominant guards in this game that both give their teams about 17.5 points per contest. Rayshon Taylor for Edwardsville throws in there with those points, 5 boards, 4.5 assists, shooting 35.5% from 3, and about 1.7 steals per contest. Shelton gives you 5 boards, doesn't do as much facilitating, but he does generate about a steal and a half per contest as well, and that's the name of the game for Eastern Illinois. When they were having quite a bit of success last year, this was a team that was a top 100 unit in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. It's been a little bit more janky for them thus far this season, but they've still been able to do a nice job generating about 9.5 steals per game. They're generating a lot of live ball turnovers. Dead ball turnovers, not so much, and it's been reflected in the fact that they gamble for turnovers because they also rank 320th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. That's where Edwardsville, though, they themselves allow opponents to shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range on the road. They're 271st overall with that regard, so they do have their issues there. And for this Eastern Illinois team, Zion Fruster is going to need to knock down those shots, shooting 42.5% from 3-point range. And he's went into inferno mode recently. 15+ points in each of the last 4 games, including a combined 52 points in the last 2 contests. And then Cooper Jacoby, I think, is going to be able to control things down low. 13.5 points, 9.5 boards, has some versatility, and is able to pop it from 3 at about a 32% clip at about 6'7". So I've been liking what I've been seeing there. And for Edwardsville, Rink Malaith has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. So he's done a nice job holding up down low for an Edwardsville team that they do a relatively solid job of not getting out of sorts. They turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest. They've done a respectable job with that regard, and neither of these teams are necessarily going to be lighting you ablaze with regards to a rebound percentage. It's an Eastern Illinois team that they're checking in the neighborhood about 277th in the country with that regard. SI Weathersville, they're about 163rd in the country, so they've been able to do a little bit more there. You've been dealing with the injury, though, to Joe Valeri for pretty much the entirety of the season, though, so they've had to do a little bit of mixing and matching there, and then you've got in the backcourt Desmond Polk, who's been able to give you about 8.5 points per contest, but has seen that three-point shooting slip to about 30% from the outside. I do think that Eastern Illinois going to be able to hold up at the point of attack down low with Cooper Jacoby, and they find a way to generate some turnovers, get the job done in this spot. So I do like Eastern Illinois right on the money line. Neither of these teams playing super up-tempo as well. I set my total 134.5. Both of these teams a little bit more defense-oriented. Do think we've went just a skoge too low with regards to this total, especially with a bunch in Eastern Illinois that has been able to reach the 66-point plateau in each of their last 5 games. So in on the over, and I'm in on Eastern Illinois right on the money line. 645, 646 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up. Colorado State, they're going to be playing us at Fresno State. Fresno State opened up as a 15.5 point underdog, and I wrote this up at 15.5. This is down to a 14.5 to a 15, and your total on this game going to be finding it at a 149.5. Even with a slight tick, do think that you have some good value here. I did set my line at 12.5 with Colorado State. This team is outside the top 150 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They've actually been a top 80 defense in terms of points allowed per possession, but you can tell that there's a lot of pieces in the backcourt that just aren't necessarily working out. I like what Niquay Clifford has provided this team. 10.5 boards, 16.5 points, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, but Colorado State is outside of the top 275 in terms of three-point shooting percentage at 30%. To their credit, when they get to the free throw line, they shoot 77% of the free throw line, as Jalen Lake throws in there 13.5 points, 2.5 assists per contest, but outside of Clifford and Lake, nobody else on the roster gives you north of 8 points per contest. Now, you've got someone like a Jailer Crooker Johnson, who comes over from the Ohio Valley Conference. He was the Rookie of the Year in that conference last year. 8 points, 4.5 boards, about a block per contest. He's been rock solid there, but for Fresno State, they started out so rough with their three-point shooting. 4 games ago, they were shooting as a collective about 27% from three-point range. Last 4 games, they've been able to go, I believe now, 39 of 90 from three-point range. They still leave a little bit of something to be desired, really, in so many facets of college basketball, as they are outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis, but I do think that they had a little bit of bad shooting variance towards the beginning part of the season, and with Vance Wahlberg. Still don't think that this is a great coach, but at the same time, he's got a lot of junior college guys that seem to be meshing now. You've been able to have Elijah Price be able to give you 9.5 points, throwing in there about 8 rebounds per contest. Mikael Robinson has been pretty versatile as well. 11.5 points, 6.5 boards, 3.5 assists as a 6'7", a little bit of a do-it-all sort of player. Namar Uyugard has been your main player, 13 points per contest in terms of scoring, but Zayon Collins being able to give you 40% three-point shooting, him being able to rise up the way that he has, especially in the wake of the Davis Douglas injury, who I thought that he was going to be one of the better players for this team this season, has been rock solid. It's also a Fresno State team that, for their tempo, because they're a top 40 team in terms of total possessions per game, 12.5 turnovers, not too shabby there. So, do think that this is a circumstance where we are seeing some improvement for Fresno State that's not being reflected in the market. I'm willing to take the points and wrote that up. And with regards to the total, did my total 152.5. Colorado State has been really upping their tempo as well. They're now in the top 175 in terms of total possessions per game. So in on the over and wrote up the points with Fresno State. 647, 648 on the betting board. Texas, they are back. They are going to be playing us to Auburn. Auburn is a 10.5 to an 11-point road favorite. Total on this game is 152.5. I wrote this up and I'm going to take the points with Texas. I set my line at a 6.5 for Auburn. This is the number 1 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And when they're on the road, they're still the number 1 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. So we will be fair there, but on the road, they're outside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so that's a little bit of an issue. Obviously, Gianni Broom has been cleaning up. He's been able to give you darn near 20 points, north of 11 rebounds. He's throwing there multiple blocks per contest. For his size, he's able to pop it from three-point range. So, this guy has been an absolute wonder. It's an Auburn team that's one of the best in all of college basketball at not turning the ball over. They shoot nearly 38% from three-point range as a collective, as you got Chad Baker-Mazar, Todd Pettiford, along with Denver Jones, all being able to give you between 11 and 13 points per contest. They all shoot at least 38.9% from three-point range, so it's all well and good, but you've got a Texas unit that, when they're at home, and specifically at home, they are second in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, albeit they have hosted some, shall we say, lesser competition, but Trey Johnson has been one of the better freshmen in all of college basketball. 19 points, a little bit over 2 assists. He's been able to shoot 40.5% from three-point range. As a matter of fact, each of your top 3 scorers, Arthur Kaluma, Jordan Pope, thrown in there, they're all shooting now at least 41% from three-point range, and for Jordan Pope, Pope, he's really been able to round into form as well. Had a little bit of a rough start to the season. You have to figure that the step up from Oregon State to Texas was really taking it out of him, but he's now been able to give the team double figures in each of the last 5 games, and in this last 5-game stretch, he's been able to shoot north of 52% from three-point range with 18.5 points per contest. I think that might dry up a little bit, but even though I think that Texas loses the battle down low, Arthur Kaluma has been very good in the post. He's able to give you a block, 8.5 rebounds per game. Caden Shedrick has been able to give you 2 blocks per contest as well, and this has been a Texas team that, with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, albeit once again playing against some lesser competition throughout the season, they've been one of the best teams in all of college basketball, being able to guard the interior as well. This is a Texas team that does a nice job of being able to get to the free throw line, as well as they've been shooting about 73% when they've been there, as you've got a few guys like Achondale Weaver, who I really like in that backcourt. He's able to come in off the bench. He's able to shoot about 35.5% for 3 with 7.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Good overall balance with this Texas team. It's going to be a true road game for Auburn as well, and Auburn's numbers over the last few seasons have just dipped when they've been on the road. I think that we could see a little bit more of that here. I do think that Auburn gets the job done on the road in terms of outright, but laying north of 10 points, not for me. I wrote up the points with Texas set my line at a 6.5, and with regards to total, I did set mine at a 146.5, so along with the points, I'm going to be in on this total under 649, 650 on the betting board. Missouri plays us to LSU. LSU does find themselves as an underdog of 6.5 to 7 points. So on this game is 150.5 to 151, and made my total 154.5. I'm in on the over. LSU playing at one of the faster paces that you're going to find in all of college basketball. Top 30 with regards to total possessions per game. Missouri not shy of running as well. More around about 125th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So fast, but not like breakneck pace fast or anything like that. But this has been an LSU team that's been able to do a really good job defensively. They're a top 35 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and I'm going to take the points with them. For LSU, I think that they're going to be able to do a nice job winning the battle down low with Corey Chess being able to give you 8+ rebounds per game. It's better for Missouri on the glass than it has been in past years under Dennis Gates. They've always been outside the top 300 with regards to rebound percentage, but I mean, still 129th in the country, not necessarily overly impressive, and now you have to go up against an LSU team that's more around about 60th, and if you take a look at them in true road games, they're a top 75 team with that regard as well. In the backcourt, it is an LSU team that they get a little bit loose with it. They're turning the ball over about 13.5 times per contest, but Jordan Sears really coming along after he spent last year at UT Martin, 15 points, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range, while Cam Carter has been able to shoot 42.5% from distance. He's been able to supply the team with 17 points per game. And Deji Bailey, who comes over from Richmond, has steal and a half at about 10 points per game. Nice stabilizer that I was not expecting out of this team for Missouri. They've dealt with the injury to Caleb Grill throughout the season, but now they're getting him back, and that's big. But in the 2 games since he has returned, a combined 6 points, so you could use a little bit more there for Missouri. They are shooting about 36% from 3-point range, and for Missouri, they've been much better defensively this year. But if you take a look at their home and road numbers, they are very much, shall we say, unbalanced, because they did face against teams like Mississippi Valley State, Arkansas Pine Bluff at home, and that was able to be a very good confidence boosters, to say the least, for Missouri. So Missouri, one of your best perimeter defenses at home in all of college basketball. Now, do I have to call a spade a spade? They also did host Kansas at home, so that was certainly a good team that they did face off against. But still, this is a Missouri team that, despite all of that, they're still outside the top 230 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. This is an LSU team that's 20th with that regard. I do think that they're going to be able to hold up. You've got Marquise Warwick, who's been able to give you about 9 points per contest. Anthony Robinson has been able to chip in their 10 points per game. And for Missouri, one of the better teams at generating turnovers in college basketball, while they themselves only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest. But I've been very impressed by this LSU defense. I do think that that's going to be able to keep them lively in a game that I do think that is going to be going up and down, as this has been a Missouri unit that's given up at least 72 points in 4 out of their last 6 games. It certainly has been a unit that has been able to provide a whole heck of a lot of offense, as well as I believe that they've been able to get past 75 in all but 2 out of their last 8 games. So I do think that you're going to get an high-scoring expose, especially with this LSU team getting past 85 in 3 out of their last 4 as well. So in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with LSU. 651, 652 on the betting board. Vanderbilt is going to be playing us to Mississippi State. Mississippi State finds themselves as a 1 to 1.5 point favorite, and your total on this game, you're finding it at 154.5. Vanderbilt actually opened up as the 1.5 point favorite. That's a big reason why I didn't write this up, because I did set them as a 3-point favorite. I wrote this up when they were a 1 to 1.5 point favorite, so that's a big reason why that was left off. But that said, I do like Vanderbilt outright on the money line. I do think that Vanderbilt just going to be able to do a good job of being able to take care of the ball, as really both of these teams are in the top 35 in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Vanderbilt might be experiencing a little bit of strife down low, as they've only got 2 guys that really give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. Jalen Carey has been able to give you 6 boards, 7.5 points per game. David McLaughlin chips in there about 8.5 boards and a block and a half per contest as well. But this is a team that's got really good balance. Headlined by AJ Hogard, give you a steal and a half, 4.5 assists, 10.5 points per contest. And then Jason Edwards, he's able to splash in there about 18 points per game. And for Mississippi State, this is still a pretty solid defense. You can tell that it's not the same defense that we've seen in past season. It's Mississippi State allowing quite a bit from the outside. On the road, they're allowing opponents to shoot 37% from three-point range. Vanderbilt over there at Memorial Coliseum as one of the more unique Coliseums that you're going to find in all of college basketball. The way that the benches are structured, Vanderbilt, they're allowing opponents to shoot only about 31.7% for three-point range at home. That expands to about 35.5% away from home. And this is a Mississippi State team that's still a little bit hit or miss with regards to their outside shooting defense. Now, Mississippi State, I think, should be able to take a hold down low with having a pair of guys that combine for 15 rebounds per game, and Keshawn Murphy along with Cameron Matthews. And you've had Joshua Hubbard in the backcourt give you 17.5 points, 3 assists. He shoots 39% from 3. All in all, for Mississippi State, they shoot 34% from the outside. Riley Kugel is a little bit of a hit or miss guy that gives you about 10.5 points per contest, but he's been on recently, 9+ points in each of the last 4 games. He also did fall out of that game against Bethune-Cookman, so that was a little bit of an issue there. But Michael Nwoko is able to give you 5 boards per contest as well. Do think that Mississippi State going to be able to win from the inside, but I do think that Vanderbilt, with their perimeter defense, with the way that they've been able to pop it from 3 and the way that they've got just so many guys they're able to handle, gets the job done in this spot. I did set my total at a 155. You've got a Vanderbilt team that is very content on running, and Mississippi State has really been bumping up their tempo as well. Mississippi State now within the top 175 in terms of total possessions per game. You've got a Vanderbilt team that right now is in the top 100 in terms of total possessions per game. So I did set my total at a 155. As a result, I'm going to be willing to take Vanderbilt outright on the money line, and here at a 154.5, I'm in on the over. 653, 654 on the betting board. North Carolina plays us SMU. SMU is an underdog of 6 to 6.5 points. Total on this game, it is 166, and I made my line 6. So at a 6.5 plus, I'm going to be willing to take the points with SMU. Now, I recognize that it was a less than savory effort for them a few days ago against Duke. Duke is clearly the class of this conference, so let's call it what it is. And we were talking about it with our good friend Mid-Major Matt. This is just not a North Carolina team that gives you a lot down low. You've got the Jalen Washington along Jalen Withers. They combine for about 9.5 or so rebounds per game. But for North Carolina, their overall rebound percentage is way down from where it has been in past years, about 134th in the country. Meanwhile, this SMU team, they should be able to do a nice job being able to dominate on the boards. Matt Cross has been able to be a nice double-figure scorer with 10 points, 8 boards per contest. And then Samat Yedoglu has come in. He's been able to get this team right around about 6.5 boards per contest. Team does a really nice job giving themselves second and third chances, and that's big when you've got Kerry Quendo shooting 44% from 3 with his 7 points per game. Chuck Harris, he's been able to shoot 46.5% from 3-point range, and it's an SMU team that their top 4 scorers, 3 of them shoot at least 82.5% at the free throw line to be able to keep themselves lively in this one as well. It is an SMU team that certainly has their warts with regards to defense. They are well outside the top 50 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and this has been a North Carolina team that has been sketchy to say the least with their 3-point shooting defense. They're outside the top 230 with that regard, and North Carolina's had a tough time really guarding anything all season long. Meanwhile, SMU on the road, they do allow opponents to shoot 38.5% from 3, but RJ Davis just continues to shoot below 30% from 3-point range for North Carolina. All you can do has be a run, good, clean offense, north of 6 assists per contest, and you do have to like what you've seen out of Seth Tribble as well. He's been able to come in, he's been able to get the team double figures, he's been a 40% 3-point shooter, so I think that this is going to be an up and down rambunctious game. You've got two teams that are playing at some of the faster paces they're going to be finding in all of college basketball as well with this North Carolina team. As a matter of fact, they find themselves number 9 in all of college basketball, and I've been talking about this as well, backing the team playing against North Carolina in the first half and then backing North Carolina in the second half. North Carolina has been one of the more interesting teams in all of college basketball with regards to their first and second half, shall we say, margins. If you look at their road and neutral court games, because in their home games they've had a lot of bye games, so that does make it a little bit more, shall we say, interesting to take a look at, to say the least. But for North Carolina, in more of their step-up games, I think that might be the proper way of putting it. They're getting outscored in the first half by an average of about 1.7 to 1.8 points per contest. Meanwhile, in the second half, they're outscoring their opponents in those road and neutral court games by north of 7 points per game. So I'm going to be fading North Carolina in the first half. I like SMU overall for the entirety of the game, but I'm going to be betting them in the first half specifically, and then in the second half, we'll see what happens, as that's a little bit more of one that you do in-game. But that said, going to be backing SMU for if you want to go full game, you can go full game. If you want to go first half, you'll go first half. That's fine with me, but backing SMU either way. And then with the total set mine at a 168, so here at the 166 and on the over. 655, 656 on the betting board. Texas Tech, it's a red face-off against BYU. BYU is a 3 to 3.5 point favorite total on this game. It is 149 to 150, and with Texas Tech, made them a 2-point underdog. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Now, with Texas Tech, I do have a little bit of fear that in these step-up spots, things are going to start to dry up for them a little bit, and the metrics are a little bit warped as of right now because they did play one of these softer non-conference schedules that you're going to find in all of college basketball. But being able to get back JT Toppin, I think is a big elixir to that. With Toppin, he's been able to supply the team with 18.5 points, 10 boards. He was missing for 4 games a little bit earlier in the season, so getting him back, I think, is absolutely massive. He's also supplying 2 blocks per game. Now, I don't think that the 3-point shooting of the Texas Tech team is going to be long-lasting. They're shooting 39.7% from 3, with Chance McMillan shooting 51.5% from 3-point range with his 15.5 points per contest, but love the versatility of Darion Williams. He's been able to give the team 16 points, 5.5 boards, 5.3 assists, and the team does a nice job of keeping things relatively clean with regards to not turning it over, only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. It is a Texas Tech team that they remain a top 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis, and this has been a Texas Tech team that has done a really nice job on the glass. They're number 23 in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Problem is, BYU is right now number 2 in the country with regards to rebound percentage. As we know, the Marriott Center, a really good home court environment, and for this Texas Tech team, they are scoring about 12 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home, and BYU, they've got even bigger splits. They're scoring about 23 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road, and it's really been headlined by Richie Sanders, as Igor Demin is able to give you about 11.5 points per contest, and you do have 6 different guys that will be able to supply at least 9 points per game. Dawson Baker has been able to come on relatively strong, and Cannon Catchings has given you about 11 points per game, but he can be a very hit-or-miss player. But you take a look at Saunders, and he can be a little bit hit-or-miss himself, because in his last 5 games, this man has scored 7, 17, 2, 30, and 9 points, but I do like what I'm seeing out of him. Overall, from 3-point range, he's been able to pop it at a clip of about 41%. He throws in there 1.3 steals per contest as well. This is a BYU team that they don't necessarily like monopolize turnovers or anything like that, but both of these teams are top 125 teams in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Now, this is a BYU team that they're going to let you uncork it from 3-point range as well, and that's a big reason why I did side with the points with Texas Tech. Grant McCaslin, just a really good tacticianer of defense for Texas Tech. Fully recognize that, again, these numbers a little bit warped because of the amount of games that they played at home, but they've been able to allow opponents to shoot about 34.3% from 3-point range, which is a little bit rough, but not as rough as BYU. North of 35% from 3. They're about 257th in all of college basketball. Both of these teams allowing a lot of open looks from 3-point range, but I do think that with Grant McCaslin, he's going to be able to get things zoned in a little bit more. With JT Toppin coming back, I do think that that percentage is going to be ticking downward, and you don't necessarily have a pair of teams that are absolutely gunning it. BYU, about 195th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. For Grant McCaslin, this is fast, 229th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, so an interesting circumstance here. I did set my total at a 150. I'm right now seeing a 149, 149.5 out there at a 149.5 or less, and on the overhand, won't take 3+ here with Texas Tech. 657, 658 on the betting board. San Jose State plays FC Utah State. Utah State is a 10.5 point road favorite. The last game is 148. Somehow line at 9.5. I'm going to be willing to take 10+ here with San Jose State. For San Jose State, you need to get Day Hall going. He's been able to look a little bit better recently, scoring 8+ points in 4 of the last 5 games. That's what you do like to see, because Joshua Duje was the 6th man of the year in the Mountain West about a year or 2 ago. He's really been the main guy for the team in terms of being able to put points up on the board. 17 points, 4.5 boards, shooting about 34% from 3-point. And it's a San Jose State team that they do a nice job not beating themselves. They turn the ball over 10 times per contest. They shoot 76.5% at the free throw line. Tim Miles always does a good job of being able to preach a little things. This has been a San Jose State defense, so that's been leaving something to be desired. And it's not like San Jose State plays like out of control with regards to their tempo or anything like that. San Jose State, once again, back outside the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game. Right now, they're approximately 269th, and this is a Utah State team that has been really good with their defense. They've been a top 65 unit in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They play a little fast. They're about 140th in the country, but I've been very impressed by this unit, as you've got Mason Fosloff along with Ian Martinez, both being able to give this team about 17 points per contest, and Fosloff has been able to chip in there north of 2 steals per game. He's shooting north of 40% from 3-point range, so really love level both of these guys have been able to bring to the table, and they both do a nice job of being able to facilitate the offense between the two of them, about 6.5 assists per game. And then you've also been able to have Dexter Cano, the transfer from Oregon State, give you about 38% three-point shooting. It's a Utah State team that, in their own right, they've been very good in terms of the way that they've been able to generate turnovers as well. A top 60 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They do allow a few open looks from three-point range, but we'll say the exact same thing about San Jose State. San Jose State is allowing opponents to shoot from three-point range right around about 32.5%. They're about 140th in all of college basketball. Utah State, relatively on par with that. They're more around about 100th, but that actually drops to about 27.5% from three-point range when they've been on the road. Utah State has really had their defense travel with them on the road, because if you take a look at them overall in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, it's pretty solid. They're checking in at 50th in all of college basketball, but if you look at things in a road/neutral court environment, this actually goes to the top 12 in the country, and that's a big reason why I did set my total at 145.5. I'm going to be in on the under, but I do think that with San Jose State, having Robert Viola be able to give you some plus rebounds per game, having a lot of size in general with the San Jose State team, a team that has been able to do a relatively solid job of playing even up on the glass. Right now, if you look at their rebound percentage, it's more around about 276 in all of college basketball. I do think that that's going to improve. Ubinger Cersei on the flip side for Utah State, shooting north of 70% from the floor, 6 boards per contest, but I do think that Sariq Nananana is going to be able to give you a little bit more for San Jose State. I think that that'll be just enough for them to remain lively in this game. I set my line at a 9.5, so at 10 plus taking those points with San Jose State, set my total 145.5, so also in on this total under as well. 659, 660 on the betting board. It is UCLA. They play out Michigan. Michigan is an underdog of 3 to 3.5 points. So this game is 141. Set my line at 3.5. 3 is the max I'm willing to lay with UCLA, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. This has been a Michigan team that has been very dominant with regards to their offense. They're ranked 41st in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but that'd be top 10, top 15 if they weren't outside the top 300 in terms of their overall turnover rate. They turn the ball over well north of 13 times per contest, and they go up against a UCLA team that is number 1 in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. This UCLA defense, number 3 in the country in terms of total points allowed on a per possession basis as well. I think that that's a bad matchup for Michigan, and I love what Danny Wolf is able to do in terms of his versatility. At 7 feet tall, 12.5 points, 10.5 boards, 4 assists. He's able to pop it from three-point range at about 35% clip, and Vladislav Golden, he has been amazing down low as well. 13.5 points, 6 boards. He's been the main scorer for the team as we've got 5 different guys for this Michigan team. They're able to give you double figures, and more of these ancillary guys, like an Amari Burnett, who gives you 10 points. He shoots 46% from three-point range. Will Shetter, he's not quite shooting the 50% that he did a season ago from distance, but still 38% from 3, 6.5 points per game. I mean, these guys have been rock solid. Sam Walters has size. He's able to knock down some threes as well. But the UCLA defense, they just get after you, and they've got guys with versatility as well. Tyler Bilodeau, who comes over from Oregon State, 14.5 points. He shoots 40% from 3. The Daily Show, Eric Daly, is right now shooting 48% from three-point range. I do think that there's going to be a downward tick with that regard, especially with UCLA allowing opponents to shoot only about 29.5% from three-point range. That's one of the better marks in the country, and Michigan matches that. They allow opponents to shoot 29.8% from three-point range. This has been a Michigan team, has been one of the best teams on the boards in all of college basketball. They do allow a few second and third chances, and obviously don't generate quite as many turnovers as UCLA does, but I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a sloppier game. This is a UCLA team that's looking to play a little bit more controlled. They're about 250th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Michigan, they're looking to run and gun it. They're about 39th in the country. I do think the UCLA gets this game played a little bit more at their tempo. I do think that more of these ancillary guards like Dylan Andrews and company step up, get the job done for UCLA. I'm willing to lay up to 3 with them. And then on the under, set my total 139.5. 661, 662 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up. New Mexico is on the road against Wyoming. Wyoming does find themselves as a underdog of 6.5 to 7 points at home. Draw last game was 148. Wrote this up when this was closer to 7.5 to 8. Still think that you've got some value here. I said New Mexico as a 4-point favorite. I wrote up Wyoming with the points. Going to elevation like New Mexico is going to need to do, that is a big, giant disadvantage for them. And this has been a Wyoming team that at home has been a top 50 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. Overall, they are 57th in all of college basketball in this regard. And for Wyoming, this isn't the world's greatest defense. They are about 167th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're giving up about 17.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. Now, they do have to match up with Donovan Dent. He's a top 15 player in the country in terms of assists per game, 19 points, 7 assists, stealing half per contest, shooting 40% from three-point range. And True Washington, he was dealing with a little bit of an injury. He's returned. He has not taken really any sort of setback whatsoever with that injury. Nearly 2 steals, 2 assists, 10.5 points, 40% three-point shooter in his own right. And out of nowhere. You've been able to get about 47% free three-point shooting out of Cade Dodson, along with Brandon Eppelhahn. So, you've got a lot of good shooting in general for this New Mexico team, but they are outside the top 340 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and that is pretty ghastly. This is a Wyoming team that they need to take care of the ball. They've been turning the ball over north of 13 times per contest in terms of turnovers per possession. They are outside the top 275 with that regard, but I like what Obi Abjim has been able to provide. 18.5 points, shooting 46% from three-point range. It's a Wyoming team that has collective. They shoot about 37% from the outside. That's a top 75 mark in the country with this Wyoming team. You've also got Jordan Nesbitt with a lot of versatility, 9.5 points. He's able to give you about 8 boards. When he was at Hampton, he was actually their main facilitator as well. He's taken a little bit of a setback with that this season, but Kobe Newton, he's been a nice sharpshooter, shooting 37% from the outside. He's able to give you about 9.5 points per contest. You just get rebounding from so many different guys, even someone like Abdul Masgasa. He's been able to give you about 4.5 boards. So I like what this Wyoming team is able to provide down low, even with Mustafa Amzil and his overall production and the way that he's able to give this team double figures at 6'10", pop it from three-point range. I do think that Wyoming going to do a nice job staying out in front of them. And again, I do think that elevation is going to be a big factor in this game for Wyoming being able to remain lively. I did set my total at a 152. This is a New Mexico team that's in the top 20 in terms of total possessions per game. So I'm willing to take a shot on the over and the points with Wyoming. 663, 664 on the betting board. UNLV on the road against Boise State. Boise State is a favorite of 7 points. So on this game is 140. I set my line at 7.5. Not willing to go past the 7, but I'm going to be willing to lay the 7. UNLV has been a relatively good three-point shooting team. They're a team that ranks in the top 55. With that regard, Deaton Thomas has been able to give you north of 15 points per game. He's been able to shoot it quite well from three-point range, but I do fear what UNLV is going to be able to get down low. As Jeremiah Cherry has been able to give you 6+ rebounds per game. Other than that, they haven't really gotten a ton down low. I was expecting a little bit more from the Oklahoma transfer in Jalen Hill. 7.5 points, 4.5 boards, 2 assists. He's been versatile, but he was a starter at Oklahoma 2 seasons ago, was sidelined due to injury for pretty much like all but 5 games. 8 seasons ago, it's come back, and it's been a little bit less than impressive for me. Jalen Bedford has been able to shoot north of 44% from three-point range. He's supplying that team with 9+ points per contest, and Jaden Henley has come in from DePaul, and when he's been out there, he's been able to give the team 11+ points per contest. They just got him back after he was dealing with an injury throughout much of November into December, and to his credit, Kai has been able to give this team at least 13 points in 4 of the team's last 5 games, with the lone exception being a 9 spot, but it is a UNLV team that also leaves something to be desired with regards to their perimeter defense. They are well outside the top 230 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and I think that that's going to be big for a Boise State team that has really struggled from three-point range. They're only shooting about 31% as a collective, but Tyson Dagenhart has been much better with his three-point shooting in recent games. He's been able to lead the way with 17 points, 6 boards per contest, and this is a Boise State team that should absolutely wreck shop down low. This is a Boise State team that's in the top 45 with regards to their overall rebound percentage. This is also a team that's pretty sure-handed at the free throw line late in games as well. If you have a cover spot, each of your top 4 scorers shoot at least 74.5% at the free throw line. 3 of them shoot at least 77.3% at the charity stripe, and Alvaro Cardenas is doing a nice job really just flowing this offense. 6.5 assists, 10.5 points per contest, throws in there a 1.5 per game. For Boise State, 11.3 turnovers per game. They're outside the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game, but all in all, pretty smooth there for Boise State. They're not really going to put a lot of pressure on you. They're well outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they are going to maul you down low with having Omar Stanley, who's become a little bit more of an ancillary scorer at about 9.5 points per contest, but he's done a nice job grabbing about 6.5 rebounds per game. Dylan Anderson has been able to shoot it well from three-point range with UNLV. Their warts with regards to guarding the perimeter, their warts with regards to being able to D up down low. I think that that's going to be a bit of an issue, and Boise State traditionally a really good three-point shooting defense, allowing opponents to shoot about 32% from distance this season. I do think that that is going to be improving as the season goes along. I do think that Boise State finds a little bit more defense to be able to get the job done. So my total 137.5 in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 7 with Boise State. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit our lone extra game. 665, 666, St. Mary's. They're going to be playing against Loyola Marymount. Loyola Marymount, a 14.5 point underdog. Dawn's game was 135. Another game that I wrote up, I said Loyola Marymount as a 9.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to take the points. I just don't know how many times I need to say it, but this is just not the same St. Mary's defense that we've seen in past years, especially at home. For some reason at home, this team has just not been as good. They're 174th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home. Loyola Marymount, it doesn't sound like much, but they're 3rd in the country in terms of fewest percentage of their field goal attempts that don't get blocked. So they're able to get good looks. They've got Devon Porter, who's been very versatile, 13 plus points, 8 plus rebounds per contest. He's someone that is related to Michael Porter, by the way. So if you're wondering on that, yes, that is of relation. And then for St. Mary's, they still do one of the best jobs in all of college basketball, just not allowing a second chance opportunity. They make sure that you're not not going to be able to get offensive rebounds, as you've got pretty much a trio of different guys. They're able to give you 6+ rebounds per game, but I do think that you still have your issues with not having that main scorer in Ada Mahaney, as that puts a lot more on the plate of Augustus Marasolinas, who's been rock solid. 14 points, 6 assists. He generates north of a steal per contest. You've got Paulisis Maruskis, who's able to give you about 9 boards per contest, and then you've got Luke Barrett, Mitchell Saxon. These two guys combined for about 15 rebounds, in that neighborhood about 22 points per contest. For the St. Mary's team, they shoot about 32% from 3, but in a cover spot as well. They shoot just 67% of the free throw line. That is a little bit ghastly. Andrew McKeever is someone that they've been looking to a little bit more, about 4 points, 3 boards. He's been able to come on strong. And Mikey Lewis shoots 36.5% from 3-point range. He's pretty much the only guy in the roster that shoots above 33% from 3-point range. And if you want to take down this Loyola Marymount team, you do want to be doing it a little bit more from the perimeter, as Loyola Marymount, not a team that's necessarily going to be going out there generating a bunch of turnovers. Now, they themselves run some pretty good, clean offense. Loyola Marymount has only been turning the ball over about 11.5 times per contest, but they do allow you to shoot right around about 33% from 3 outside the top 200 with that regard. But I do think the Loyola Marymount going to do a good job on the interior. They're a top 125 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, with having Alex Merkfeldez give you about 7 boards, 11 points per contest. Will Johnson has been able to dole out about 3.5 assists per game as well. So I do like what I'm seeing out of this team. John Vide has been a little bit slow going, but now he's shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. Caleb Soncarable, 13.5 points per contest as well. So I do like this Loyola Marymount team. I'm going to be willing to take the points. And do you think that this is going to be a slow-down slog? You still have a St. Mary's team that, despite the fact that the defense hasn't been what it was in the past, still outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. Loyola Marymount more around about 220, so in on the under and in on the points. And now we had our lone extra game.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-667, 306-668. This is NC Central, and they're on the road against Morgan State. When this was taken off the board, NC Central was a 3.5 to a 4-point favorite with the total between 155 to 156. As I am doing this podcast, this has not been relisted, but I would think that you'd be getting similar numbers here with NC Central. I did set them as a favorite of 6.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with this NC Central team. It has been all sorts of less than savory for them on defense, to say the least. They are outside the top 240 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're still doing a relatively solid job of being able to guard the 3-point line. They hold opponents to shooting about 33% from 3-point range, and for this Morgan State team, they are 355th in the country with this regard. Morgan State in the bottom 25 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Just lots of red flags there. And when it comes to this Morgan State unit, it has been very up and down with regards to their offense, because they brought in Winston Tabbs from Boston College, and when he's been out there on the floor, he's been great. 15 points, 2.5 assists, not really shooting it well from 3-point range. Problem is, he's been all sorts of banged up. Did return in that game against South Carolina State, but he did not look like himself. He had 3 points in about 21 minutes, so that's something that's a little bit concerning. So he should be good to go in this one, but again, I don't think that he's fully 100%. You've got Cameron Hobbs, who's been able to give you 12 points per contest, and it's a Morgan State team that, to their credit, they shoot about 35% from 3 and 50% from the floor, but they also do turn the ball over 14 times per game. And one thing that NC Central has been able to do a relatively okay job of, I'm not going to call them amazing with this regard or anything like that, they're always a team that's able to generate some turnovers, and they need to, because this is a team that's 339th in the country with regards to overall rebound percentage. Morgan State really not a lot better with regards to rebound percentage. They're more around about 246th in the country. For NC Central, you don't have a single guy on the roster that's able to give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. Tammy Edidire has been able to give you about 4.3 rebounds per game, so he's been able to give you a little bit of something down low. But I like what I'm seeing out of the backcourt duo of Keshawn Porter along with Po-Boy King. King has been your main man with 16 points, doesn't really shoot it well from 3, but generates about 8 steal and 8 per contest, and Porter shoots 39% from 3-point range, a little bit over 11 points per contest, and they found a nice, shall we say, facilitator in Deontay Johnson. Johnson give you 4.5 assists, 7 points per contest. Again, not shooting it well from 3-point range, but he's given the team a combined 21 assists, 9 steals, and 4 turnovers in the last 2 games. So I think that that's going to be able to elevate NC Central in this game and help them get the job done against a Morgan State team that they very much are looking to play up tempo. And for NC Central, this is typically a little bit more of a moderate tempo team. They've been speeding themselves up quite a bit this year as well. They're more around about 224th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Morgan State, meanwhile, they're just absolutely running it and gunning it this season. They are currently clocking in about 64th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So I do think that you get yourself a nice up and down game. I did set my total at a 158.5, so I'm going to be in on this total over. And with regards to NC Central, willing to lay up to 6 with them. And that'll wrap things up for the Tuesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Matt Josephs, aka Mid-Major Matt, who joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Jayden_D1. Keep in mind, there's the name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I'm coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, which means I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.